This week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we just want to make sure that we appreciate all of our Columbus City School teachers.
I appreciate my teacher because she gives us the good books to read.
I appreciate my teachers because of all the opportunities they have given me this year.
I appreciate my teachers because they help me understand what I learned.
I appreciate my teachers because they have made such a big effort this year to help us learn in the way that we have and connect with us.
Hello, my name is Maria, and I'm a student here at Columbus Downtown High School. And I really enjoy all the teachers here because they're so friendly, just so nice. And they really encourage all of the students to participate and to really just do our best.
I appreciate my teachers because they have helped me with a better career and future for myself.
I appreciate my teacher because they have helped me in my grammar since English is my second language.
I appreciate my teacher because she gives us fun work to do.
I appreciate my teachers because they allow me to think freely and not suppress my thoughts.
I appreciate my teachers because they teach me things.
And we appreciate all of our teachers too. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you, students, for that wonderful video. It is Board President Adair, and I am calling our May 5th, 2021 business meeting to order. Mr. Treasurer, will you please call the roll?
President Adair.
Present.
Ms. Beckerly.
Present.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Cole.
He's excused.
Dr. Pierce.
Present.
Mr. Ragland.
Here.
Vice President Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you so much. And, you know, it is Teacher Appreciation Week, CCS community, but it is also a lot of other professional appreciation days and weeks. And so the board has also put together a video to say thank you to our wonderful staff during these great weeks and days. And so I'm going to ask that we play that video now.
Hi, Team CCS. It's Board President Adair, and it's May. And do you know what that means? No, not just the last full month before summer break. It is the month that we get a chance to say thank you to so many of our amazing team members. Each and every day, you work hard to help us meet our mission, and we appreciate you so much. In fact, we have so much appreciation, I couldn't even do it myself. So take it away, board members.
Hello, CCS teachers. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, and in a year like no other, it is entirely fitting that we express our profound appreciation for all that you have done for our students this year. Throughout this year, we watched you recreate your craft in a virtual setting and build community and provide instruction to our students. And then we watched you pivot again when it was time to bring our students back to the classroom. Throughout it all, you continued to inspire and amaze us, and we are deeply grateful. Thank you also to our substitute teachers who were able to fill in, again, under difficult circumstances when our students couldn't be there. We appreciate you and all you do for our students. Thank you.
Board Member Tina Pierce here, and it's National Physical Education and Sports Week. We want to thank all of our gym teachers, coaches, and our community partners that are providing activities to keep our students active, healthy, and safe during school, after school, and during the summer. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Remember, an active body leads to a healthy mind.
This is Columbus School Board Member James Ragland, coming to you in celebration of National School Lunch Heroes Day, May 7th of 2021. To all of our cafeteria workers here in CCS and abroad, we just want to let you know how much you are appreciated. You do the work that we know takes care of young people and makes sure that they are given nutritious meals and they have the sustenance that they need to be productive in school. So, for every extra chocolate chip cookie, every French fry that you know we may not need, but you give it to us anyway, and for the fiestadas, Lord, for the fiestadas, we say thank you and job well done.
Good evening.
to our remarkable CCS school nurses. Our dedicated, resourceful, and compassionate school nurses have been doing so much to help our students and their families during this incredibly stressful and challenging time. I'm Eric Brown, and once again, it's my privilege and honor to celebrate and to recognize you, our CCS school nurses, on National School Nurses Day 2021. And most especially, to thank you for all you do. You know how important your work is to our school community. We also understand that you protect our students in times of crisis, serving on the front line and helping to address our students' health issues. Kate, you and your team are wonderful. We appreciate you all, and we respect the great work you do for our students. From all of us, our parents, students, and community, we all offer our sincere thanks. Thank you.
I am out here on the streets of Columbus looking for some of our amazing bus drivers. You know, these individuals worked so hard during the pandemic, and even though we were at home during part of it, they were still working, transporting our charter non-public students. You know, our bus drivers are more than just the people that open the door and hit the gas. They really do provide a level of social emotional support for our students. They're the first and last people many of our students see. Bus drivers, you are so important to the way that we serve and how we serve, and we appreciate you so very much. We also want to thank the members of the transportation team that help these bus drivers get to and from their schools, picking up all of their students across this district. We have some of the largest transportation operations in this country, and it is challenging. We thank and appreciate you as well. You are truly amazing members of our team. Thank you so much for all that you do every day to serve our students and community.
Hello, CCS principals. It's Principal Appreciation Week, and we want you to know how much we appreciate you. In this year that was like no other, we watched you rise up. Your leadership and creativity were truly inspiring. We owe you a debt of gratitude, and we want you to know that we appreciate you. Take care and have a wonderful week.
And we do appreciate all of our team members, and you deserve so much more thanks every day. And so we hope that you are getting all of the wonderful thanks from your building communities and your students and each other, because we are really all in this together, and it's been a very challenging year. And so again, we just want to say thank you as a board, and we sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. So now, you can do your little hearts. Yeah, love. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Board Member Beckerly will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Board Member Beckerly. All right, board members, you have a copy of your agenda. We have public comment. Then we are going to have a public hearing on reemployment of retired employee. We will have the internal auditor's report, the treasurer's report, and then the superintendent's report this evening. We have to look at the proposed amendments to the charter of the policy committee and our board matters. Of course, we have our consent agenda. And then we will have board announcements. We will have an executive session this evening, and we will come back to adjourn our meeting in public session. Are there any, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions, additions to the agenda? Seeing none, please call the roll.
President Adair,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland,
Yes.
Vice President Reyes,
Yes.
that motion carried.
Thank you so much. All right, and just let it reflect, Board Member Brown has been here. They're getting him set up. He's coming in right now, but he's present in the room. Okay, we have public comment this evening. We actually have two speakers this evening. The first speaker is Rebecca Hinkle McGrath, and the topic that she'll be addressing is FACTS, stands for Families Acting for Community Traffic Safety. She would like the board to consider the survey results and consider safety solutions for our students. Board Liaison Nichols, do we have Ms. Hinkle McGrath?
President Dare, the speaker's on the line.
Thank you. You have 4 minutes to address the board. You may begin. Is she still there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. You have 4 minutes to address the board.
Can you hear me?
may
Can you
begin.
hear me? Okay. Okay. Good evening, President Adair, Vice President Reyes, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Dixon. I am Rebecca McGrath, a proud alumnus of Fort Hayes Career Center. Currently, my 22nd year at CCS. I teach at currently at Columbus Downtown High School. In the fall of 2019, at the FCCLA Family, Community, and Career Leaders of America Fall Leadership Conference, my students were challenged to survey the community as part of the Families Acting for Traffic Safety FACTS. Around that same time, a CCS middle school student was walking to her bus stop and unfortunately was struck by 2 vehicles and passed away from her injuries. My students immediately began filling out the FCCLA FACTS survey, and we passed out 50 more copies. Including in December of 2019, my CDHS advisory committee members completed the FACTS survey too. We ended up getting 35 plus returned by January of 2020. And please watch our video created with our results and thoughts at this time. Okay, I think the video stopped. In November of 2020, after the COVID pandemic, at home schooling had ended and my career tech students returned to the CCS classroom, we decided to take the paper FACTS survey and create a Google form to survey more people. As of April 2021, we are still continuing to get similar results. At the March 3rd, 2020 Board of Education meeting, Jasmine Pennywell presented on issues of 20-minute late bus conditions at her child's bus stop, and she was asking for help from the board for some type of bus watch program for parents to sign up for. With years of similar stories and same problems, I'm suggesting a form of a committee, one who previews routes for our busers and walkers at the time that our CCS children will actually be using those routes, and possibly assign safety and security officers to be at certain locations until buses can arrive and get them safely. Building relationships with our students and families starts even before they get to our classrooms. Thank you, and I hope that you hear and have seen the seriousness of some of the issues that our walkers and busters face in CCS. And I hope that you will help us to find real solutions for change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for addressing the board, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week to you. Thank you for all you do. It sounds like you've done an amazing job, not only teaching your students about this issue, but how to advocate as well. So thank you for that. Board members, do you have any clarifying comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we do appreciate the video, and this topic is obviously something very important. It's actually something that we also need to continue to work with our sister government and city council on, in ensuring that all of our students have safety access to bus stops and to and from the bus stop. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we certainly will continue to monitor this. Oh, Board Member Beckerly actually has a comment, and Board Member Ragland, sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that we will circle back and touch base with you from the Culture and Climate Committee, because safety is part of our overall the jurisdiction, I guess, for the lack of a better word. So please stay tuned. Once we're up and running with that committee, we will make sure we address these issues.
Thank you, Board Member Beckerly. Board Member Ragland.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Ms. McGrath, for your service to the district. My question is more to the administration. Could we take a look at costs to the district for eliminating the 2-mile radius for walking to the bus stop and those types? If we could lessen that to maybe say a mile, could we see what that would cost us? Just if we were to take those routes that are currently 1.9, 1.8, 1.7, and just make that a mile. Could we estimate what those costs are and get that information back to the members of the board, please? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Well, we will have Board Liaison Nichols add that to the question list. Thank you again, Ms. McGrath, for addressing the board and taking the time to advocate not only for the students you teach, but for all of the students in the community.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we have another speaker tonight, and that person is Michelle Dalzell. The topic that she would like to address the board on is the adjustment transfer process. The request is she would like the board to change the adjustment transfer policy. So we'll wait for Liaison Nichols to come back with the caller.
President Adair, the speaker is on the line.
Thank you so much. You have 4 minutes to address the board. You may begin.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for your service and your time. I see all of you as equals and respect each of you at the same level. A little background about me. My name is Michelle Dalzell. I'm a Columbus native. I live and work in Columbus. I'm also a Columbus City Schools building substitute teacher currently. I am the granddaughter of the legendary Carol J. Stewart, the woman who saved Central High School from being destroyed and dedicated 4 decades of her life bettering the city of Columbus so the apple does not fall far from the tree. Also, I'm a community leader and advocate. I graduated from East High School, Columbus State Community College, Franklin University, Indiana Wesleyan University, and currently Walsh University. I believe I have served on a few committees with some of you. I think Eric Brown looks familiar. We have something in common tonight, all of us. We are both here to improve the Columbus City schools and to make sure our families and community is supported and cared for. My degree from Franklin University is in business forensics, investigating white-collar crime. I'm well-versed in separation of duties, checks and balances, opportunities for unethical behavior, including fraud and collusion. I share those qualities with you because they directly relate to my request. I was denied an adjustment transfer and was told that it did not align with the policy. So I checked into the policy and I found the policy to be useless and only served to destroy and deny families a need that could have been met. The policy is located in the Administrative Guidelines book in section 5000 under students. The title is Processing Adjustment Transfers. The code is AG 5113.01D. It was adopted in 2015. The reason for the adoption is not stated in the policy. It was last reviewed October 8th, 2020. It does not state who reviewed the policy. My request is that the policy is abolished or done away with totally. Any transfers that need to happen with students shall be handled solely by the Central Enrollment Department. The district has an open enrollment policy and does not need another policy to complicate the transfer process. If the board decides to keep the policy, there needs to be immediate changes made. The first change is to remove the Chief Accountability Officer from the process. A person at that level should never be in an approver status. That role is for planning, implementing, organizing, and managing. Also, in the policy, it states that the Chief Accountability Officer has the final say. That should never happen, ever. A person at that level should never, ever have sole power to approve or deny. So where is the accountability for this person's actions? Is he or she reporting their denials and approvals to the board? There should always be a hearing process option for any denial made to a family. I am requesting an audit of all denials and approvals that have been made to ensure fairness and equity have been served. How do we know? This is not an accusation in any way. I'm just stating, how do we know that the Chief Accountability Officer is not denying someone because they are Black or brown or whatever, or because they are best friends with a principal and want to do that principal a favor? Right now, we don't know. The role of the Chief Accountability Officer is to make sure laws are not, and will not be violated. My son's case clearly violated state and federal funding laws because he missed 145 hours of instructional time, and the Chief Accountability Officer never knew about it until the request was made it to her desk. She needs to explain how her system let that happen, or somebody does, because the very policy that allowed this to happen is a policy that she is part of. There are many people waiting for the answers to this request today. So I'm asking for an exact time and date as to when we will hear something from the board. This is a serious matter. It needs to be addressed right away. We live in the age of accountability and technology. We are actively dealing with racism, and we need to make sure that we are ensuring fairness and ethical procedures are followed to hold anyone accountable who might seek to harm another person. Thank you.
Thank you so much for addressing the board. Are there any clarifying questions or comments? Board Member Brown and Dr. Pierce.
Okay, is that better? Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Just wanted to check, chairing the policy, soon to be the Policy and Governance Committee, I believe. I'm happy to take a look at that and to consider those kinds of changes. But I'll need to have a bit more. If you would provide your contact information to Misty after we get off the line. And if you have your comments in writing, that would be very helpful. Or if you just have notes, provide a copy to Misty and she'll get them to me. And that will be helpful as we proceed and take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will have the policy committee look into that. Dr. Pierce?
Yeah, so my clarifying question is, you indicated that your son missed hours of instruction. Can you give us an estimate about how many days or weeks your child was missing that instruction due to this lack of response or decision on our part as a district?
Can I ask who was speaking just now?
I apologize. This is board member Dr. Tina Pierce.
Oh, I'm sorry. So your question was the specific time that he was missed.
So you indicated, did you say 144 hours? Like, what does that equate to? Did he miss 5 days of school? How many days?
So what happened was March 21st, I emailed Central Enrollment to have my son withdrawn from the Digital Academy and placed into Valley View, his home school. So I'm just giving, I got to kind of play through the dates. The reason for that was to do the adjustment transfer. Wait, I can't hear. Are you, I think there's a delay. I'm looking at the screen and someone's talking and then I can't hear anything.
Okay, don't watch the screen. There is a delay when you're watching YouTube versus what we hear. So just talk to us on the phone.
Okay, so I'm not going to look at the screen anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm addressing Dr. Tina Pierce's question. March 21st, I'm sorry. I sent an email requesting that my son is withdrawn from the Digital Academy and that he is placed back into his home school, which is Valley View, because I was requesting an adjustment transfer that my son go from Digital Academy to Starling, where I was currently teaching, substituting in the building. The process started March 21st. I submitted the actual application March 23rd or 24th. It was given to my building principal or to Mrs. Artrip. She forwarded it to my building principal. My building principal signed it April 1st, forwarded it to the superintendent. The superintendent had the form. I don't even know how many weeks he had it. So the whole time I'm waiting to hear back from someone, from the central enrollment, from the principal, from the superintendent. And in the meantime, my son he didn't have access to iReady. He wasn't even given a cohort to attend Valley View. It was weeks that had passed. So 3 weeks passed. I heard nothing. I did send a follow-up email to the superintendent just asking, can I get an answer for this? I need to make some decisions. He did not respond. And so this whole time, my son was getting zero education. I was going to withdraw him completely and just withhold him. And so that is what I'm saying. He was not getting an education at that time. And nobody was even following up with me. No one was giving me any answers. Does that answer the question?
That does answer the question, but I have one more question for clarification. So you indicated that you signed the document went to the superintendent. Was it the superintendent or like a regional superintendent or one of our regional ADs?
So the person so I was copied on the email from the secretary and my building principal, and it went to a Scott Nelson. And I think he's a superintendent. I don't know what level of superintendent he is, but I did send a follow-up email directly to him because his name was on the email. That was about April 12th, and I did not hear back from him at all. And then I waited a little bit longer because I know some, things happen. But I believe April 22nd was the day I just gave up. I said, I'm just withdrawing him. I can't take this stress anymore. And so that's what got me to looking into that process of why did this happen? How is this allowed to happen? And if it's happening to me, an employee of the district, is it happening to other people? And what can we do to not complicate this process so that this doesn't happen to anyone else?
So I apologize. Another clarifying question. When you say withdraw, you completely withdrew your child from the district? Or was it just—
I was planning on, yes, my plan was to completely withdraw him because I was so frustrated and so overwhelmed and so emotional at this lack of support and care and just the whole thing, that I was going to completely withdraw him. But I sat down with my 5-year-old son and I asked him, what do you want to go to school? And of course he said, yes, Mom, I want to go to school. So I got an email from Pamela Artrip, who is the Valley View principal, who has been the most wonderful part of this process. And she gave me my options. Once she was given the denial, that's when she felt that she could follow up and give me my options. And that was on April 21st or 22nd. I don't know what day that was. I would have to look, but it was very close to that time. So that's when I decided. She said he could go to this cohort, and I talked with his dad, and we decided that we were just going to send him, even if it was just for a few days a week for the last few weeks of school.
Thank you. So, well, okay, one more, Dr. Pierce. One more.
No, this isn't for the caller. I guess this is just for us all to consider. It sounds like a very confusing process to me, and given our plans to move back into the classroom, I would like additional information to know how we're handling those transfers when students are moving from the digital academy back to their home schools or into a lottery school. However they're transferring, I would like additional information about that process.
Okay, we will add that to the list, as well as have the policy committee look at the policy itself. Board Member Ragland.
Yes, thank you for calling with this issue, ma'am. My question is around the March 21st date when you requested the initial transfer out of Digital Academy. Were you given specific instructions as to what was to happen with your child while the transfer process was taking place?
This is another issue. March 21st, I did not hear back from anyone. I did get an email. So to answer your question, the answer is no. And to add a little bit to that, I actually had to call Central Enrollment myself to find out what was going on. They had actually transferred him back to Valley View on March 21st or 22nd, but I didn't even know it. No one even called me, emailed me, sent me a letter. No one told me anything at all. I thought he was still with the Digital Academy. So I didn't even know that he was back with Valley View and could actually physically attend school.
Okay, I would thank you for that clarification, Madam President, and I would hope that that timeline, as far as the process is concerned, once the parent articulates a desire to transfer, I'd like for that timeline to be articulated as well as with lines of communication to the parent when we get some information back from administration, please. Coupled with Dr. Pierce's.
Yeah, well, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, we will add that to the question list for administration. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I'm sorry that your family was frustrated through this process. That is certainly not how we want anyone to feel. And thank you for being a substitute in our district. I have to mute Board Member Brown. Hold on. Gotcha. Thank you for being a substitute in our district, and you are appreciated in that capacity as well. So we will, you heard that we're asking the administration a few questions, and then we're gonna have our policy review committee look at that policy. Board Member Brown will get in touch with you. So we'll definitely keep you looped in on this process. So thank you so much for reaching out to us.
You're very welcome. And there are other people that are waiting for me to give them answers. That's why I asked for a specific time, because other families that are going through similar, not quite exactly like mine, but very similar troubling experiences. So I'm kind of the voice for several people right now. That's why I'm asking for specific time, a time frame. So
understood. We will have someone from the administration follow up with you in the next few days, and then we will loop you in on the rest of the timelines about what's going to happen with the review of the policy. but we will have someone from the administration definitely reach out to you. And if that doesn't occur, you can always let us know.
No, that's fine. I don't really need to hear from administration anymore. I've kind of given up on them. I just really want to know, I really want to see something happen with this policy, because I feel like this is what's hindering, it's complicating the process. It's creating a lot of people to be involved in something that should actually be a very, very simple thing. Moving one child from one school to another should not be overly complicated like this. So I'm very eager to talk to Mr. Brown and work with him to help modify or abolish the policy. That's really the goal. I don't really need to hear from administration anymore. I'm sorry. I just feel like I've given up in that area, and I hope that it's understood and respected that I feel that way. I was very, very, very upset. It took a lot of courage to call and share this with all of you, but I know that I'm the voice for many, and it does take courage to do this.
It does, and we very much appreciate it. We will have Board Member Brown reach back out to you, okay? Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention this evening.
I will share my, President, I will share my information with Misty Nichols as Mr. Brown requested.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you all so much for serving, and I appreciate your questions. Have a wonderful evening.
You too, bye-bye. All right, board members, we're going to go ahead and move on to our direct reports. So the first up is our internal auditor. Hello, Internal Auditor Smith. How are you this evening?
I am fine. Thank you very much. I'm just not used to being first. So.
I know.
Okay. Board President Adair, Vice President Reyes, and members of the board. My report is actually going to be a little bit shorter than what I had planned because I was planning to go over some highlights from our recently released Auditor of State report, but that report has not been released because of, I forgot about the state auditor's blackout policy. Where there's an election, they don't release things because they don't want to possibly sway any type of vote. So our report should be released tomorrow, which means I will have an update for the board at the May, I believe, 16th meeting. So with that said, I will go over my normal reports that I provide to the board after the Audit and Accountability Committee has their monthly meeting. So ANA met on April the 22nd. The committee reviewed a draft of the redrafted committee charter, but no vote was taken. The committee was requested to provide me with any changes or any comments that they had regarding the charter. I will input them into the redraft and send them back out to the committee for a possible vote at the next meeting at our next meeting. There was a vote to release a report on the human resources employee benefits processes. That report was approved for release. The audit revealed a very hardworking group of individuals, and the audit also provided opportunities to make recommendations to gain efficiencies and increase effectiveness. The audit noted 7 issues. 2 issues were rated as high, 4 issues were rated as moderate, and 1 issue was rated as low. A response has been received from the administration, and at the appropriate time, the Office of Internal Audit will go back to the Human Resources Department to perform a follow-up procedure to see if the implementation plan is effective in addressing the issues that were noted. The audit also highlighted the cooperation between the Office of Internal Audit and HR as HR implements the recommendations from the Council of Great City Schools peer review, which was released in spring of 2020. There were a lot of things that the Office of Internal Audit had planned to review during our review, but because the Council of Great City Schools had already reviewed those issues, it was definitely more cost effective and more efficient for us just to perform follow-up procedures on those recommendations versus doing our own audit, coming to pretty much the similar and same conclusions. A final copy of the report has been sent to the board and is on the district's Office of Internal Audit webpage. Now, if you'll bear with me, I will share my screen and go over the Office of Internal Audit's dashboard. Am I able to share my screen, Scott or Ryan? Okay. Okay, can you all see that? No?
We just see the window that's got the file folder.
Okay.
You might have shared the wrong window.
I'll try this again. Oh, okay, I see what I did. Can you see it now? Okay, great. Okay. For the month of March, for the month ending March 31st, this is the status of the activity that took place in the Office of Internal Audit. The first graph shows a bar graph of just the activity broken out into 3 buckets. The first bucket is the audits, and as you can see, the planning is the blue bucket. The in progress is the yellow, field work is gray, and then the report issued is your orange. What I do want to highlight on this graph here is that you will notice there are no items that have been delayed. We were delaying some work on some school audits, but now that the personnel are back in the schools, we have been able to go back in and basically complete that field work, and I anticipate we will be able to issue those reports by the end of the year. If you wanted to see more information as far as the names of the audits, you will be able to see that on this report here, which shows you the audit name and the status as of March 31st. And then the final view, if you wanted to actually see the movement of the engagements, we'll just take capital improvements, which is the 4th one down. You can see that the planning and scoping has been completed, field work has been completed, and the report has been issued. So it's the same information just shown in 3 different formats. The next item did require a vote of the committee, and this was to make a change to our work plan. We asked the committee if we could add 2 additional engagements to our plan and remove 2 engagements from our plan. The additions, the superintendent did commission the Council of Great City Schools to conduct a peer review of transportation. That engagement has been completed by the Council of Great City Schools, and similar to our work with the Human Resources Department, we're going to be working with transportation as they go through and implement the recommendations that the Council of Great City School made. The second addition was a mid-year risk assessment update. We don't normally do that, but because of the situation with COVID, we really have wanted to keep an eye on events that are happening in the district to see if we needed to make some adjustments to our work plan. The items that were approved for deletion, we were planning to do some follow-up activity on the PDK curriculum audit, but the superintendent is bringing that to the board. So there was really no benefit for us being an intermediary in that process. And then the other deletion was a talent acquisition and recruitment engagement that we had planned. But once again, this area was thoroughly covered through the Council of Great City Schools when they did their engagement. So we are just going to work with the Human Resources Department as they go through and address the recommendations made from the Council of Great City School. So once again, the committee did recommend that these additions and deletions move forward. Finally, you've seen these before, but just in a different format. Prior to us purchasing our automated audit work paper system, we used to have to generate this through Excel and Word. Now we're just able to basically push a button and this generates this type of information for us. So this identifies the issues that are outstanding. The page that you're looking at right now is for the treasurer's office. This next slide is for the Office of Business and Operations. And once, if at all, the superintendent's office has some time and we can actually go through and sit down with them and verify the information, you will see a very similar graph for the open issues in the superintendent's office. And as I've kind of mentioned before, in addition to the engagements that we do, we also like to keep track of engagements that other external entities come in and do regarding the district. So this is just a flow chart, not a flow chart, a slide that shows the status of, just for example, the WCBE on line 2, the WCBE Office of Inspector General's engagement that they did last year. And we will continue to do this for any type of engagement that a third party comes in and does, and where the superintendent or treasurer asks for our assistance in this manner. And Board President, that completes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Auditor Smith. Are there any questions from the board, or are there any comments from our co-chairs, Board Member Beckerly and Board Member Ragland? I can't see all of you because
oh, I'm sorry. Once I figured it out, I didn't want to stop.
There you all are.
Okay.
Are there any questions or comments?
No, I'd like to. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank Auditor Smith for her continued diligence in working with the office. The entire office is working very, very hard. I'd also like to take the time to thank both Treasurer Bohoric as well as Superintendent Dixon for the spirit of cooperation. I do believe, and I'm hoping that my co-chair would echo this, but I do believe that we are fostering a very good spirit of cooperation between our direct reports and the entire district, along with the Office of Internal Audit. They've just done really some yeoman's work, and you'll be able to see that when we report out next month on some of the findings that have taken place and some of the things that have been done over the last year or so. Just really, really proud of the work that has been done. And I want to thank all of you for your diligence in making this happen. So thank you. That is it for me today, Madam President.
Thank you, Board Member Beckerly.
Can you hear me now? Sorry. Your co-chair concurs, Mr. Ragland. Yeah, I don't want to belabor it, but the cooperation and the collaboration that's happening between the Office of Internal Audit and the Superintendent's Office has been really inspiring, and I do think it's wonderful and wonderful work, and we appreciate all of you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Beckerly. Any additional comments? Well, thank you for your report, Auditor Smith. It's always good to talk with you. We will go ahead and go over to the treasurer, and board members, no, I did accidentally skip item 5, so we will come back to item 5 after the direct reports. So sorry about that. So So Treasurer Bohoric.
Thank you, President Adair and Vice President Reyes and members of the board. Tonight, if all goes well, I will have for you a report on the update to the 5-year forecast. There we go. This is the May update. We do this report twice a year, and this is the update to the November 2020 report. It was presented and reviewed by the Finance and Appropriations Committee back on April 14th. It is presented to you here for discussion and questions and information, and then it will be presented to you once again at your meeting on May 18th for final approval. As you know, I begin these reports with some catchy quotes about the uncertainty of forecasts. This one is one of my favorites, that forecasting is difficult, especially if it's about the future. And then I will have to credit Board Member Brown for adding one for me. And this is a quote from Paul Sappho, who is a technology forecaster in Silicon Valley. He's also a consulting professor in the School of Engineering at Stanford. And he's done a lot of forecasting relative to the dynamics of large-scale long-term change. But his comment here is that the goal of forecasting is not to predict the future, but to tell you what you need to know to take meaningful action in the present. And I think that's fits very well with some of the early indicators that we point out in our forecast in terms of calling our attention to when the board needs to take action to have an impact on the financial future of the district. As you know, there is a legal requirement to do this, as I mentioned, in November 30th of each fiscal year to file the original one, and then do an update somewhere between April 1st and May 31st, or anytime a significant event takes place. And lastly, my quote here was attributed solely to me, and that is our forecast is always just a snapshot of what we know today, coupled with a long list of assumptions, and it's always subject to change. I think I found that when I went to present this to the board, or to the FAC committee back in April, that days before I presented it, things changed, and that's just what happens. So I'll go over some of those variables and assumptions here in a moment. This is the May 2021 5-year forecast, and my presentation is organized in this fashion. I'm going to start at the top of the pyramid with a summary, go through the major revenue and expense groupings, and then get into some line item detail, going from whatever you might call the 40,000 foot level down to into the weeds. And this is primarily so that as each section comes up, it gives you an idea of when some of you who don't want to go that far want to nod off and just ignore what I'm saying, that this will be the trigger point for you. So let's get to the summary of the forecast and look at the major items, summary lines on the forecast. You have total revenues and total expenditures at the top in the blue and the orange lines. And then ending cash balance, the yellow line. The blue line is a reserved cash balance, meaning we subtract out 30 days cash balance to give you an idea of what it is on a reserve basis. And then the difference between revenue and expenses is shown by the gray line. So the takeaways here, you can see in FY21, expenditures begin to exceed revenues, and that's when the gray line goes in a deficit position. And then in FY25, you'll see that the reserve balance goes negative, meaning we don't meet our 30-day cash balance target, but we are in fact positive in cash. Putting some numbers to it, revenue during the forecast, it's going to grow from in 2018 from 925 million to about 998 million. And at the end of the forecast, this is an annual growth rate for total revenues of about 1.1% compounded annually. On the expenditure side, we're going to grow from an actual number in 18 of 871 million to 1 billion with a B, 77 million at the end of FY25. This is an annual growth rate of just over 3% a year. And so you can see here, it doesn't take an MIT degree to realize that if your revenues are growing at a little over 1%, but your expenditures are growing at over 3%, that is an unsustainable condition, and we'll see the impact of that here as I move along. This is the revenues over and under expenditures. Again, indicating here in 21 that we begin to spend more than we take in on an annual basis, and then that deficit spending will accelerate in the out years of the forecast. Ending cash and our reserved ending cash, as I mentioned, this downward slope for your cash balance line is unsustainable. And again, we're positive here at about $72 million at the end of the forecast, but relative to 30 days cash, we're actually negative around 17 million on a projected basis. Moving on to major groupings of revenue. Here we have property taxes and state aid, the blue and orange lines. And as we all know, those are our two major sources of revenue. All the other line items of revenue, while to most of us, they're in the tens of millions of dollars, and it seems like a big number, but relative to $1 billion budget, they pale by comparison to property taxes and state revenue. I would point out in this graph that note that all of these revenue lines are pretty flat, meaning there's very little annual growth in them over time, hence the 1.1% annual growth in total revenues. Putting some numbers with it, property taxes are growing from an actual number in 18 of about 500 million to 570 million. I forecast property taxes on a calendar year basis because that's when they're levied and collected. And I allow for about 1.2% growth in property taxes in the off years, that is in between reappraisal and update years. And then in those reappraisal and update years, between 2.5% and 2.8% increase in property taxes for those time periods. State aid is kind of an interesting line. You'll see here for 21, our estimate for the end of the year, there's been kind of a bump. And you know, we did go through a reduction in 20, which carried forward to 19, but then in 21, this current fiscal year, there was a partial restoration of a little over $5 million in state aid. Plus, we received a rather large dividend payment from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation that ends up on that line from an accounting perspective of about $19.5 million. So it creates that little bump there. But the real comparison is here to 19 to 20. You can see that it's down about 9 million. There was about 9.2 million in that cut. And it was restored about 5 million. So you can see here from 350 to 355.5 million, that's where my forecast is flat for the balance of this forecast through FY25. Of all the lines here, this one is undoubtedly going to change in the next couple of months because we are in the middle of a state budget bill. And they're talking about doing a variety of things relative to the Fair School Funding Plan. School wellness and success funding and how that's going to be handled. How that is going to be handled will affect our expenditure side, and what they may or may not do with how they fund school vouchers and charter schools will also affect us on the expenditure side. So both kind of above and below the line, this is highly likely to change between now and the end of June. Down here, the gray line is property tax allocation. That's the homestead and rollback. Pretty much follows property tax revenues. And as you know, our last levy in 2016 is not subject to that rollback payment from the state. The next couple of major revenue groups, other local sources. The bump here in 19 is due to a rather banner year in pilot payments. The drop here down to 25 million flat for the balance of the forecast is due to a change in my assumption about investment income, short-term rates, which is where we participate on the investment side in the 1 to 5 year range. Rates in the short end of the yield curve have fallen about 100 basis points over the last year. And so I've backed out a pretty good dollar amount on investment income to reflect that drop. So that's the explanation there. And then you've got non-operating revenues that remain flat. Those have to do primarily with some advances and transfers in. And this graph just shows you that the two major sources of revenue account for 92% of our overall income. State aid continues to be right in that 36 to 37% of our total funding. Moving on to expenditures, I just broke this into operating expenditures, personnel and non-personnel. You see that that's obviously the clear majority of our expenditures, and then non-operating and debt, a much smaller portion there at the bottom of the graph. Putting numbers to this, you can see that personnel is growing at about a 3.2 annual rate, and non-personnel grows at about 2.1% annually. And again, you can see, I will go into some detail about what's included in that personnel line in a minute. On the non-operating expenditures, have to do with transfers. And you can see here in 19, that was the $30 million transfer to fund the Dominion Brookhaven North program realignment. And then I have, I'm proposing a transfer of $80 million to fund a school bus purchase program. I will be detailing that to the Finance Committee next week when we meet. And you'll hear more about that later, but I've included in the forecast when we get to considering that, funding that program. And if I'm asked what's the impact on the forecast, I've already got that built in. When we look at personnel and non-personnel expenditures together, it accounts for about 97% of our overall expenditures. But within that non-personnel number, we have charter and vouchers. And I just wanted to show that while it was 30-some% on the previous slide, you see here that charters and vouchers account for a significant portion of that. And so they're in that 20 to 22% range of our total expenditures. One of the things I point out as well is that when you look at our personnel expenditures running at 67, 66%, other school districts typically will be in that 85 to 90% range. So I share with the committee and with you this evening that if I were to back out the deductions for charters and vouchers, exclude them from this calculation, you'll see that we actually do operate at about 85% in personnel expenditures. This 21 is just a blip because of that transfer that I've included for the bus purchase program. Now getting into the weeds line by line, you can see this is broken out or for all the revenue lines in the forecast. Again, putting numbers on property tax and state revenue that you've seen and rollback. This is all other revenues, the blue line, and again, banner year and pilots, and then a reduction for investment income. This gray line is the reimbursement from the federal government for our qualified school construction bonds. Our transfers and advances out and other funding sources are broken out and detailed here. This green line for operating transfers in drops off because debt service payments in the fund, that debt service gets retired for those bus purchases that we did. So that's why that drops off. Going into the expenditure lines, you can see there are many, many more expenditure lines in the forecast that we track than revenues. Again, the major ones, personal services and benefits. The personnel line grows at about an annual rate of 3.4%. It includes some negotiated wage increases through FY22 and a 1% increase assumed for the years after that. It also includes a portion of the 5-year personnel plan that was presented to the Finance and Appropriations Committee a month ago. The total FTE included in the 5-year plan, which runs from FY22 to FY26, is 259.65 additional FTE. In this forecast, since it'll only run through 2025, is of that 259 positions, there's 241.65 positions shown here. Benefits grow at a rate of about 2.9% annually compounded. Purchase services here. This begins the non-personnel section where we change the methodology for forecasting. In November, we forecasted based on a budget basis. This time period, this time for the May update, we are forecasting it based upon expenditure, actual cash expenditure history. So while we budget at a certain level, we actually spend something less than that. And so, for instance, here, we're at about 94% of budget on the purchased services. And so that picks up some, that improves our cash balance when we change the forecast methodology. The reason why I did that is because the Finance Committee over the next 12 months is going to be looking at the need for operating levy and or permanent improvement levy. And so I want this to be as close to a cash flow document as possible so we can hone in on the true need for a levy from a cash flow perspective. So you'll see that with that change in methodology, we pick up and have an improved ending cash balance fairly significantly. This breaks out charter from the overall purchase services, and you can see that without charters growing from 186 million to about 234 million, the growth rate for purchase services without charter is about 2.2% annual. This green line is going to change. The proposal now, as it exists, is to directly fund charters and vouchers. So if that happens, this is the expenditure side that would go away, while the revenue side is reduced as well to pay for the charters and that deduct. The expenditure side will go away. Hopefully that's at least a net zero, if not a slightly net positive for us from a cash balance standpoint, but we'll wait to see what the legislature finally comes up with. Capital outlay and supplies and materials. The bump here in supplies and materials at an increased level, even when we do it on a cash flow basis, is increased because of textbook purchases, planned textbook purchases, and learning materials purchases. Capital outlay, it just is in that $3 to $4 million range, and there's nothing significant going on really in that line. On the debt-related lines, you can see the green line is the bus purchase debt, and it drops off to zero here in 2025. The blue line are the payments that we make for the qualified school construction bonds, and the brown line here is just the interest related to both of those debts, and you can see it declines over time as debt is paid off. Lastly, other objects, mainly this is auditor and treasurer's fees, and you can see here that the year in 2020 when we got a refund, this was posted because it was in the year that those expenditures occurred. We posted that as a refund in expenditures, a reduction of expenditures rather than a revenue item, and so the accounting for this is quite frankly a little odd, but I think we've decided that here on we're just treated as revenue, regardless of which year it comes in. It smooths things out and keeps it a bit more consistent. Transfers out and advances out again. The 34 million here in fiscal 19 for the Dominion Brookhaven North realignment, and then my proposed bus purchase program here. The advances out are for cash flow needs in other funds. They typically become advances on the revenue side over time. Do some comparisons for the committee. I like to show them that what we're estimating for the end of year 21 separately, and looking at plan that we had in place versus our end of year estimate, and then looking at 22 to 25, and that's where we really hone in on that change in methodology from a budget basis to a cash flow basis. A lot of numbers here, and I'll just pick a few to look at. First of all, here in state aid for fiscal year 21, you can see that we're going to be about 27.6 million above plan. Again, $19.5 million in a Bureau of Workers comp payment. We had pulled casino revenue out of the forecast in November, and in fact we did receive about $2 million in casino revenue, so that's accounting for that, and it drives that total revenue about 22 million above plan estimated to finish this fiscal year out. On the expenditure side, again, very good example of why I'm switching to a cash flow methodology, because we do run under budget, and so these changes for 21 are all relative to that, along with some pandemic issues in the personnel services, not having as high of expenditures as we might have expected. In all, by the end of the year, we should be about 77 million under plan for FY21. What's that mean to total expenditures? We should be right around on plan, $4 million above, but essentially we're on plan. And again, this is the $80 million transfer, just to point that out to you and how that impacts the bottom line on expenditures. Overall, when we get to ending cash balance, we'll actually build a cash balance by about almost $18 million by the end of the year versus what we had estimated. Our original estimate was 250. We should end about 268 million. For the balance years 22 to 25, quite frankly, on the revenue side, the only thing really notable is here in line 106 for other revenues, and that's the reduction that I made to reflect my reduced estimate for investment income. Up here, I'm sorry, in state aid, see the 5.8, that's the restoration of that cut that we added in, and it carries forward in all those years. Again, that will undoubtedly change by the end of the year. Overall, total revenues and other financing sources since November, over that entire 4-year period, up only 1.7 million, and it doesn't even register as a percent change. On the expenditure side, again, adjusting for actual expenditures versus budget, you can see some over the 4-year period, some fairly significant pickup there in the forecast. Debt service pretty much unchanged because we know what that is going to be. Total expenditures, operating expenditures then are over this 4-year period, total about 160 million that will increase our ending cash balance. Some minor changes in that 4-year period for these other financing sources, other financing uses. And at the end of the day, total expenditures will be over this 4-year period about 158 billion less. And in the end, the impact on cash balance, we pick up 17.8. That number right there is what we picked up in the fiscal 21 estimates. And then the 160 reduction in expenditures and some increases in revenue. And we go from 106 million forecasted deficit in November forecast to a slight positive of 71.8 million. So that was about $177 million swing, largely due all to the change in the philosophy of how we're forecasting expenditures. Just a summary, over the total 5-year period of the forecast, we pick up about 23.6 million in revenue. Again, largely due to the restoration of the cut, the Bureau workers' comp dividend, and casino revenue. We have a net gain of 54 million in reduced expenditures, and so we have that pickup of about 177 million, and we'll end the forecast at 71.8 million. Again, short of our 30-day reserve balance, but still positive. What's next? As I mentioned earlier, state budget and the school funding formula and student wellness and success funds all up in the air. We've given testimony numerous times in support of the fair school funding formula. We have our fingers crossed and our hopes high that something comes through on that substantially as it has been presented in the bills before the House. We have to see what the Senate might do with that. We are, as you know, in the middle of strategic planning, and oftentimes that involves staffing. While we do have a 5-year staffing plan in place, as the superintendent, works further to put together the strategic plan and the board finalizes all your goals and guardrails, undoubtedly there could be some staffing changes down the road. And I know I have a reorganization plan in place that involves staffing, and I believe the internal auditor has some things too. So your direct reports are doing a lot in terms of organizing our respective pieces of the organization here to get ourselves aligned with one another. Wage negotiations, we'll have one bargaining unit this year, and next year there'll be another bargaining session that goes on, so that will certainly impact the forecast one way or another. We continue to be mindful of our planning, how we're spending the federal dollars so that we don't create a fiscal cliff. And so we'll watch that, but again, that's a unknown and a variable that will potentially affect the forecast in the out years. As I mentioned, the Finance and Appropriations Committee will be the planning arm for the board to look at operating levy and permanent improvement levy, just those two types of levy, to address operating needs and life cycle replacement needs, perhaps. So we'll be having those presentations at the committee meetings over the next 12 months. Then we have, as you know, an ongoing FMP process that'll be running concurrently, and I anticipate, I believe, and some of you may know better than I, that you're shooting for early next year to have some output from that process. This process typically leads to a bond issue rather than a PI levy. A bond issue is intended to fund large capital improvements, entire building renovations or reconstructions. And so those are different types of issues. And while the committee will keep an ear to the ground on that, and I will certainly participate in those discussions, that really won't be part of what the FAC does. But again, it is a variable and will have an impact on our financial picture for the future. That is the end of my presentation on the May 5-year forecast, and I will do my best to answer any questions you might have. And again, I'll bring this back to you on the 18th for your final approval.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just always just so in awe of you, your ability, and your staff really to do these reports. It is. I know we don't always ask you questions, and you don't always get the highlight, but this is so important. The financial health of our district. I mean, if we don't have this, then we can't build the portrait, right? And so to you and your team, thank you. You are so critical, and just the amount of work and the amount of just thought behind this and the way that you are helping us approach the way that we're looking at our finances has just been really incredible. So thank you, Stan and team, for this work that you do every day.
Yeah, thank you. And it truly is a call out to the team, because rest assured, as this might have seemed to be a little bit in the weeds on some of the line items, even deeper than that, folks on my team, we look at individual transactions. We look for large receipt items, large expenditure items. We sit and we discuss and talk about what's the likelihood that will continue. We really do execute a lot of diligence when it comes to putting the forecast together. And I'm always pleased with the end result. We typically are if you understand the assumptions, given the assumptions, we are pretty good at being on target. And I really feel that it's we overuse the word transparent, I think, at this point, but we really do disclose much of how we arrive at where we get. And I like the process too, because we always make sure that the catch is worth the chase. So some line items just aren't worth spending a lot of time on, quite frankly. But when we get into property tax revenues and state revenues and some of those things, we do really dig into them. And I get a lot of help, and I have not just a second set of eyes, but 4 or 5 different sets of eyes on these numbers. So I'm real pleased with the outcome. I'm very pleased that we do it in-house, and I'm glad you appreciate it. So.
Thank you. We do have some questions or comments. So Board Member Brown, and then others, if you do, let me know.
Thank you. Stan, I just wanted to, every time I go through this, and I've read it and I heard the presentation with the committee, but it struck me this evening as we were looking at the chart, and it may be helpful to go back at the forecast on personnel cost. It visually looked like the increases including this, or especially from 22 to 25, were increasing at about the same rate as those before, even though you're making an assumption about those at 1% per year. Am I correct? Stan, you're muted.
Trying to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. I was searching back for the slide and see if I have the one that you are referencing.
Was on expenditures. That's it. Wow, you're good. Yeah, I was, you've made, as I understand it, we've been on a contractual increase that we agreed to with the association. And that runs through 22. From 22 to 25, the slope up of that line, the blue line, appears to be, continuing to increase pretty well, even though, as I understand it, you've made a 1% per year assumption about those. Is that correct?
Well, it's a 1% assumption about the across the board increase on the base. Beginning here in 22 and continuing through 25 is the addition of that 241 positions that come in. I don't have the year by year.
Okay.
It is phased in over this time, but there are 241 between the end of FY21 and beginning in 22 through 25. There are an additional almost 242 positions.
Okay. Well, that helps explain why the graph continues to rise as much as it does. I was wondering whether some of this beyond that 1% that you assumed was the result of step increases and extra years of service and degrees and things like that.
Yeah, we do make some estimates of that and include that in our projection. And keep in mind that this year is the kind of these 2 years, 20 and 21, are odd years. I believe our costs for personnel are depressed. I've mentioned to the committee, both in terms of overtime pay and substitute cost, it depressed that. So I reach back here to 19 to do a better trend to get that line out here, especially and with the addition of the new staff. So it may appear that slope of that line and that rate of change, it is greater than in the previous years, but the 20 and 21 are artificially depressed as a result of COVID.
Got it. That's helpful. And I know because this is, I guess, our single largest expense every year, I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly what was here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments for Member Beckerly?
I'd like to pick up on those 241 hires that are in that projection that Eric was just referring to. And I'm not sure if this is a Dr. Dixon question or a Stan question, but are they teachers? Are they where are they coming from? And is that part of a plan to reduce class sizes? Basically, is what I'm curious about.
I don't have the plan off the top of my head. My apologies, but it is a mix of staffing, and that report was given to FAC. I'd have to go. We could go back and do that.
Well, maybe we'll just put that on a bother Misty to find the answer to.
Sure.
That. I'm curious about that.
And we have charts on that as well. I just didn't bring them to
Sure.
explain the staffing plan tonight.
No, that's fine. I don't know if well, let me ask this question first. And this is a forecast, see in the future question, I guess. As it stands now, in terms of the what's going on at the State House, are the charter and voucher funding that's going to be separate from us?
the House version of the bill has them funded directly.
Right, okay.
Now
And-
the Senate is considering their proposal for the budget.
Okay. I'm just wondering if, I mean, we've talked about this, and I guess for the answer is we don't know if the direct funding is going to hurt, help, or be neutral to us relative to their funding act formula.
Well, the Fair School funding formula assumes that they are direct funded. It assumes that student wellness and success funds are folded into the funding to help pay for the formula. There is a phase-in period of the formula. I believe it's 6 years. So is it beneficial to us to direct fund charters and vouchers? I believe the answer to that is yes. One, in terms of, I think, clarity. Two, then, any changes that the legislature would want to make to the funding for vouchers and charters would be done separately. It wouldn't be run through our accounting for that. And I think that just is clear and allows them to stand on their own and not be convoluted, I think, in our funding formula.
Right, because I mean, we talked about, if the pie stays the same size, it doesn't really matter whether it's coming through us or going out the other way. And I guess I was wondering if there's any indication about the size of the pie. I'm sorry, this mask is.
No. I'm tilting it's probably my hearing, just make sure I hear you correctly. We won't know the size of that overall pie until, this House and
It's too early. Okay.
We've seen the simulations are out there from the House version.
Right.
Dr. Roush and I were able to verify that calculation, which is very exciting to us because oftentimes we can't get their number, but we're able to verify what they've put out publicly, and it is in line with our expectations for the phase-in of the Fair School funding model. So that's all. I can't say any more until we hear more about where the Senate might go with it. Dr. Roush, do you have something you would like to share?
The only other thing I would like to add to the discussion is that there is a statutory appropriations limitation that's in place, that the budget can only grow by a certain percentage unless they get I believe it's a 2/3 supermajority to say that they'll go beyond that, which does not appear likely. So the pie can only get so big at the present time. So there is a limitation there on the I think they call it the SAL, and it's I'm missing what the S is off the top of my head, but it's the appropriations limitation. And so there is a limitation on how big the pie can get. So I did want to note that, but as we continue to go forward through the Senate, we'll know more. We'll know more about what's happening. There is some additional dollars, I think, above and beyond from the House version where we were. And so we'll just have to wait and see how this shakes out. We'll hopefully know by June 30th this year and not June 46th as we did 2 years ago. But it remains to be seen.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I do have another question, but I think that I can tell James is anxious to ask his question, so I'll stop taking up your time. I might circle back with you later.
Okay.
Board Member Ragland.
Yes, I like pie a lot. So let's stay with the pie there, the pie discussion. Theoretically, Mr. Pahort, if Columbus City Schools sees an increase in enrollment due to students leaving charter or non-public schools, would we increase our revenue?
And you said, did you preface your question with the phrase "in theory"?
Yes, sir, of course.
Actually, Board Member Ragland, the good news is the Fair School funding formula is in fact a formula, and it is in fact driven by enrollment numbers. So as our enrollment numbers go up or down, our funding should change. And that's another, it sounds odd to say that, it's a formula, and you think, well, don't we have a formula now? Well, it looks like a formula, but it's really a resource allocation model, because the overwhelming number of school districts in the state are either capped or on a guarantee. There's no formulaic activity going on. This model will it be a formula? And so the answer to your question, I think both in theory and in practice, is as enrollment changes, so will funding for us and any other school district. And that's the idea behind a formula.
Thank you. That would be my charge to the board, is that we continue the very good work that we have been doing around equity, around our strategic plan, our long-term strategic plan, really place emphasis on the portrait of a graduate. Those are the things that make Columbus City Schools competitive to the individuals who are taking their children out of our district. The harder we work on making sure that we have an equitable district, the harder we work in making sure that our students are accountable, that our teachers are accountable, the more we will show the public that they can entrust this district with the future of their children. And so we'd all like to see more revenue coming into Columbus City Schools. I think that we have engaged over the last several years in embarking on that path. And so, we could say what we want to a legislature that numerically may not be designed to do what we would need them to do. But I think the real work for us, and the more enriching work for us, is the work that we are already embarking on, and that we do on a day-to-day basis. That's how we're going to get where we need to be financially. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Board Member Ragland. Any other comments for the treasurer? All right. Well, thank you so much, Treasurer Verhoor.
May I just one closing comment? We have
Yes,
a FAC meeting, Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting, a week from today. It's online. It's 4 p.m. The agenda is, in addition to discussing the monthly financial report for April, we will have this. I called it tonight a bus purchase plan, but it's really a student transportation fleet replacement plan. And we'll be talking about that. I will also have an analysis for the committee that I've worked with our municipal advisors to prepare on our TIF revenues, to verify the TIF revenues that we receive. This is the first time we've done that. And then lastly, I'll be reviewing for the committee, doing an overview of the reorganization of my office for their, just informational for them. I'll be rolling that plan out here in the next few days and over next week as well. So we're really excited. We're really excited about all of that. I know we need to move on, but it's you talked about the cooperation between the superintendent and the internal auditor and my office. And one of the things that internal audit turned up in the transportation audit was that and it's specifically written there, there's no bus replacement program that's funded. They have a replacement program, they just haven't been funded. So this is exciting because I've been working with them on the funding side while they give me ideas about what the replacement strategy should be. And so when the committee gets it, we won't talk about which bus, we'll talk about an overall how you manage a replacement plan. And the TIF revenue review is great because it confirms that we are receiving what we should receive, which is another kind of close the loop. And I'm sure folks in internal audit will be nice to know that we do try and verify that kind of revenue. And then lastly, my reorganization plan, which is, hi, Carolyn. We tend to be the full employment act for internal auditors over in my shop. but we're really excited about the reorganization plan. It's the largest undertaking I've done in my 40 years. Like I said, we're rolling that out here soon in the next couple of days to a week. So thank you very much. I'm done, and good night.
I love that you're so excited, and I took a peek at that plan, and it does look excellent. So I'm excited too. Well, thank you, Treasurer, to you and the team. All right, hi, Superintendent.
Hi.
All right. Well, actually, I know you've been here listening for a while. I hope your event earlier went well, and I'm sure it did. Excellent. So we are on to you for your report.
All right. So thank you, President Adair. For tonight's report, I will be turning it over to my team to tell you about the planning and preparations that are underway for next school year. Even as we are working diligently to finish this school year strong and also planning an exciting summer experience program, our teams also have an eye towards next fall as we prepare to welcome back our students in person 5 days per week. Before we get into the reopening presentation, I have some very exciting news to share with you tonight. After extensive planning, including health and safety preparations, I am delighted to announce that we have finalized our graduation plans for the class of 2021. This year, we will get to celebrate the class of 2021 with in-person graduation ceremonies June 2nd through June 5th, taking place at the Columbus Convention Center, East High School, Columbus Afrocentric Early College Fieldhouse, and the district's Southland Administrative Building located at 3700 South High Street. These sites have spaces large enough to safely hold ceremonies for our graduates and their families, following all health protocols. The spaces will allow for each student to have 2 tickets. This ticket limitation is based on the size of the event space and the need to comply with the 6-foot social distancing requirements. Each venue will follow COVID-19 health and safety protocols, including the requirement of attendees to wear face coverings and social distance at all times. We will also live stream all of the graduation ceremonies on the district's Facebook page and YouTube channel for those who can't attend in person. Unlike the pre-pandemic ceremonies, guests will be permitted to enter the venue sites no more than 15 minutes before the ceremony and be required to remain in their seats while at the venue. More information will be provided to families from each school's administrative team. We're looking forward to offering these in-person ceremonies as they will be the first time since their junior year that this group of seniors will get to see their entire class and celebrate this milestone in their academic career. The complete schedule of CCS graduation ceremonies is currently posted on the district website, including our summer graduation, which will be held on August 14th. I look forward to celebrating in person with our class of 2021 and their families next month. Now, I will turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Dr. John Stanford, who will begin the presentation about our plans for the next school year. Dr. Stanford?
Thank you, Superintendent Dixon. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. It is hard to believe that we are just 3 short months away from the start of a new school year. Superintendent Dixon directed a small team before spring break to start working on a reopening 2.0 plan for the fall. Although there are still some details that we have to work on, We are here this evening to give you, our families, and the community a general overview of the reopening plan as it stands today. As always, if there are changes beyond our control that requires us to make adjustments to the plan, we are definitely prepared to respond appropriately. We have reached out to the associations and Columbus Public Health to initiate conversations about the plan. We understand that there is more dialogue that we have to have with each of our partners. I will open the presentation tonight with a few assumptions that guided our work. I will then turn it over to Dr. Breeden to share our plans for academic acceleration, blend ed, and latchkey. Ms. Verdney will cover technology. Dr. Clarno and Dr. Hill will address extracurricular activities. Mr. Gary Bright will share some brief remarks about transportation. Mr. Odom will report on our facility readiness. He will then turn it over to Mr. Ward to share our safety and security readiness for the fall. I will then briefly review our layers of COVID mitigation and monitoring plans that we will have in place. And then we will conclude the presentation with a brief collective bargaining summary from Mr. John Dean, our Director of Employee Relations. And so with that, let's get started. The start of the school year assumptions that we started with, as the superintendent has already indicated, students will return to school 5 days per week. Students will also have to bring their fully charged devices with them each day, because there will definitely be work in the classroom where the devices will be used, and there will also be assignments for homework that the devices will be useful for as well. And so we will be asking students that, to bring them to school, take them home, and then bring them back the next day. And then last but not least, staff and students will follow COVID-19 health and safety guidelines. So those are the assumptions we use to guide the work that we're about to share with you. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Terry Breeden, our interim chief academic officer. Dr. Breeden.
Good evening. I am so excited to talk to you about our plan for academic acceleration. One of the things that I know is when there has been a disruption of learning, and I don't think the world has ever seen in our recent lives a disruption like we've had totally worldwide about this. But the one thing that research always does say is that you cannot remediate yourself out of the problem. You must find a way to accelerate learning. And so that is why that is going to be a word you're going to hear over and over again. One thing that I'm very excited about is, as I have prepared this, there are a lot of reports coming out talking about learning loss, unfinished learning, and those topics. Just today, I got a copy from the Council of Great City Schools. They have sent out a report, and the information that we have planned here in Columbus is aligned with best practice research. And so we're very, very excited to talk to you about it today. All right, let's go to the first slide. And this is really the what. What is our strategy for accelerating learning? The first thing I want to say is that some students have lost learning, but I also don't want to forget to mention that some students have flourished in the more online blended learning approach. So I don't want you to think I am saying everyone has lost learning and no one has done well. I am not saying that. We have seen evidence of both things in our work. All right, I have a 5-point plan. I just always have heard you have one hand with 5 fingers, and that's all the strategies that you should be having. You should really think deeply about this and get to the root strategies, and that's what I've tried to do. The first thing is, I must say one more time that I am so thrilled that we did the PDK audit when we did, because it has been a guidebook for issues that we have needed to work on and things that we prepared for the audit also came in to be invaluable to us as we've moved forward. And the very first thing that I want to talk about is over the summer, last summer, and in the fall, we were able to look at all the standards that teachers have to teach, and we identified what we're calling priority standards. We had priority 1 standards, 2, and 3. Priority 1 are what it is said to be absolutely essential. You know, if you're in an Algebra 1 class, this is what you must know to be able to go further into deeper mathematics. So our teachers have been armed with that information all year, because we know you can barely get through the standards in a normal year, let alone a COVID-19 year. So we have focused our curriculum on the essential priorities, and that is critical to teachers as they've worked throughout the entire year. We're not scrambling now. That was in place and was ready to go. The next thing that I want to talk about is learning loss. There are lots of things that I could go into about learning loss, but let's just talk about one that is upon us, and that is summer break. No matter who you are, sometimes summer you are faced with learning loss. And that is one reason I am so excited about our summer experience. And I just want you to know that over 600 people registered today, but I want you to have the latest and greatest numbers. So first I'm going to ask Elise Clark if she'll tell us where we are with numbers, and do we have any more room for anybody, Elise?
There is more room. However, as you stated before, space is filling up pretty quickly. So we are up to 3,800 students. I'm really excited because, as you stated, just in one day, that number has jumped by 600. So get your seat. Elementary is almost full, but there are still spaces. Elementary, middle, and high school.
Yes, and one of the things that we want to say is, you know, even if you don't think that your child is behind, this is a wonderful experience. A lot of our activities are going to be outside, and I think this would really help the students, you know, feel like they're getting back to normal by participating in these very engaging activities. I believe Kelly Rivers is with us tonight, and she has a rising kindergarten summer experience, and we have some openings there. And if she's here, I'd like her to hear about that.
Thank you, Dr. Breeden. We are very excited about our Rising Kindergarten program, and our registration just opened on May 1st. And so we have about 140 of our students already enrolled, but we still have about 100 spaces left. So we definitely want to encourage all families to register to get that new kindergarten experience. We're excited to have you.
All right, parents, if you're listening, please, please, please register your students, your children, for summer learning experiences. There's also about 10 of our school sites that have customized summer programs too, so you may also want to check with the building principal. All right, our third of 5 strategies, and I know I do this every time, but I think it is very important. I want to turn again to our multi-tiered student support book. I have just finished reading part of a study, and John Hattie was one of the authors of the study, that said one of the most important things that we can do for unfinished learning and learning loss is to have a multi-tiered student support system already in place. And let me just give you a really quick example. Let's suppose that I am a 4th grade teacher, and I suspect that Frank has a problem, one of my students, with vocabulary. And if Scott would open up the link under MTSS, I'm just going to show you a snippet because this is such an important strategy. In our MTSS, there is a 3 through 5 reading decision tree. And so the first thing that it tells me in the first part of that sheet is what assessments might I need to look at to see if my hunch about vocabulary is spot on. You'll also notice to the side, it reminds me that I need to involve early the parents or the guardian of the child so that also I can explore what's going on at home, what's going on in the classroom as I'm gathering my evidence of how to intervene with what I suspect to be a vocabulary issue. And if you'll notice, there are flowcharts there, and the center one really speaks to what do you do after you assess and after you determine that vocabulary is the situation, what are the next steps? And this helps because it talks about what interventions that we have in the district that address this problem. It also helps you clarify your thinking about it. And it also tells you what exactly the child needs. So you can see, and I'll go back to my slide now, you can see how effective this is and really how simple it is and how streamlined it makes it to individualize for learning situations or unfinished learning that we are dealing with. So we have that in place. We've had it in place all year, and now that tool will be essential to our strategy for acceleration of learning. Number 4, if I had the golden ticket to how to accelerate learning, it is number 4. You cannot accelerate learning unless you have a guaranteed, rigorous, and viable curriculum. And the PDK audit told us that we didn't have a strong curriculum, and we have been working on that and making great strides. And Ms. Clark will be back to talk about that a little bit later in another board meeting. But what we have learned as we have corrected those errors, what has come to light is that our real issue that we have to deal with is to make absolutely certain that the curriculum gets into the classroom. We have it. It is beautiful. The PDK people tell us that what we've done is amazing, but we're still struggling with delivery. So what we have done is on June 2nd, we're going to begin a learning technology office that is going to focus to be sure that our curriculum is one click away from teachers, students, and families. And we are so excited about that because you can have a great curriculum, but if you do not have it delivered to the people that need it, you might as well not have it, just to be quite honest about it. So I hope I get to come back and talk to you a little bit more about the Learning Technology Office, but I've got to keep moving. Number 5 is also an extremely powerful, has an extremely powerful effect size on learning. It is rated right up there with the MTSS, and it's really being sure that we have inclusive practices and an environment where we will support our students. And at this time, if Kira is on, I would really like her just to talk to us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Dr. Breeden. Hello, everyone. So we know that as students transition to a full traditional school week, supporting their social and emotional health will be imperative to their overall growth. And this will be a priority for all of our teams as we begin next school year. We also know from our recently adopted board goals that our teams are committed to growing inclusive practices across the district. Inclusion will help improve achievement and accelerate learning. Next year, this work will begin by regionally aligning services, providing professional development in the areas of co-teaching, scheduling, inclusion, and collaboration for all team members, from building administrators to teachers, support providers, and our assistants. It is our intent to refine our practice and set long-term plans in motion to ensure that all our students reach their full potential.
So that is the 5 big strategies that we have. And those strategies are wonderful. They're research-based, and we are very excited about them. But how do you do them? And so that's the next slide, the how. The first thing that we did was, as we were working with our planning, and that also involved the general fund budget, which I've learned a great deal about tonight, thank you very much, is we had to stop doing some things and start doing some other things. And already in our general fund budget, we knew that we needed, for example, just 2 examples are we were going to need more nurses and we were going to need more psychologists. And so we increased those at the level that we could afford to, just like a family doing their own budget. But with the federal funds, the ESSER money, we are going to have a supercharged acceleration of learning in this district. And let me just talk briefly through these. This is just a big overall summary. There's lots and lots of details, but since Stan did his report, I don't think we'll go into them tonight. 1, we're going to have an administrator who is specifically focused on accelerating learning. For example, we've learned that to determine who is on track or off track in the high school is a tedious job that we must do, but we really need a system that alerts us. It has items that are flagged, and when those are triggered, the early warning system speaks to that. That would be just an example of something that I believe this person could be really being the champion of in our district. We're going to add 33 additional counselors, which will lower the ratio tremendously so that students can have time to spend with their counselors and working on any issues that come up with them or their families. We're concerned about literacy, but we are super concerned because we have some goals to meet here that we are going to be working on extra hard. And we are adding literacy specialists at all schools, pre-K through 12. There are literacy issues at the elementary school, and there are literacy issues in the senior classroom. And we are not going to leave anyone behind when it comes to literacy. We also know that research tells us that students who have English as their second language are impacted more so than English-speaking students during the pandemic. Basically, that is what it says. And so we know their families need support, and so do the students. And so we're increasing our bilingual liaisons in all regions. Another thing that we've really learned a lot about this year is attendance, and that we need a systematic, research-based, audit kind of attendance plan. And that is also going to be a key responsibility. We can have the greatest plans for addressing learning loss, but if the students do not attend school, it will not serve us well. Also, another population that has been impacted by the past year or 14 months is our homeless students, and there's probably more homeless students. I haven't looked at the numbers, but nationally, I know homelessness has gone up. And then we have other students who have other issues that need additional support. So this is not the what of our plan, but this is how we are going to be absolutely certain that we're going to be able to execute. So that is our basic acceleration plan, but I've also got some more good news. And the next slide, I hate to say, but I think I'm going to even act more excited than our treasurer did in just a minute ago when I talk about blended ed. You think, what in the world is blended ed? Well, if we go to the next slide, the big secret will be revealed. As you know, the Digital Academy was rolled out very, very quickly. And we appreciate all the hard work. And we have over 4,000 students in the Digital Academy. But we know that's not the model that we really felt was best in all aspects. So recently, now that we've got things rolling, and I can't help but thank the staff so much and all the dedicated teachers of how we've been able to work with that this year. But now that the dust has cleared, we had some artifacts of some of the times when things weren't going quite so well that we sat down and looked at. I had created a stakeholders mailbox where people who had issues, especially about the curriculum, could send me examples and other concerns that they had. And so we went through those and we said, we're just going to do a very simple protocol here, which is look for the big themes. We also had the artifacts left from our staff on feedback that they had given. And so we also went through that. And what you see there in the bullet points are the big things that we heard from our stakeholders. One, we want full-time teachers. We want those teachers to be available during school hours. We like the flexibility. We feel there needs to be a better balance between synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. You just didn't get it quite right. Also, we're worried about screen time with our youngest learners. And then occasionally we would like to be together in some ways. Perhaps there's a book club, or when we do testing so we can have the correct testing environment, when we do orientation, when we do a field trip. So this was the feedback that we got, and I would love to spend lots and lots of time on this, but you can also have me back to talk about that. But let's just talk about a quick summary here of what's going to happen next. After getting this feedback on the next slide, the biggest feedback we got is we were not satisfied with Edgenuity. I'll just say it. And so we began to wean ourselves off their curriculum. And as our curriculum is being further developed, we believe by 2023, we will be able to be not needing Edgenuity anymore, because we have Canvas, and that's going to help us, because Edgenuity is not just curriculum, it's also the platform. And so we have to make sure we have that built out. We're also very pleased with a software called Seesaw. So next year, we're still making progress to our goal, but in 2023, we will have the curriculum, CCS curriculum in Blend Ed, and we will also have full-time teachers, and you can see other information there of our plans moving forward. On the next slide, I just want to kind of wrap up Blend Ed by talking about how I talk about blended ed. I say it's a school without walls. And that seems to help people kind of get the picture. We also believe that if we take Blend Ed and we adopt it into our open enrollment procedures, that we will be better served. Right now, I heard earlier the speaker who talked about some difficulties, and we do believe that moving into more of our other protocols will help it, rather than we've had children coming in and out of it this year and those kind of things. So open enrollment begins May 17th through the 28th, and parents are being notified immediately that Digital Academy model is going away, but Blend Ed is coming their way. We've set the maximum at 2,000 so that we can plan and have the staff on board and be ready to roll when school begins. Students will enroll for the entire year, and like I said, we'll follow the open enrollment protocols. We also are happy to report that the model we have created is allowable by the Ohio Department of Education, so we can move forward with our plans. So that's Blend Ed. The next thing that I want to talk about is very brief, Latchkey. That is one of our parents' favorite programs, and I want to give you a quick update on that. We will, if we go to the next slide, we have all 21 locations will be open. The hours and days of operation will return to the pre-COVID schedule. And now, rather than just 5 of our sites being able to process registration and payment digitally, all 21 sites are able to do that. So that concludes the academic service portion of our back to school plan. So at this time, we'll turn it over to technology.
Good evening, everybody. This is Vandana Virni, Chief Information Officer for the district. Good evening, board members and Dr. Dixon, Ms. Smith, and Mr. Bahorek. I'm glad to present the technology plan for the reopening. Dr. Breeden went through a few key things. The main thing being mitigating learning loss, and how do we create inclusive classrooms, and how do we create them with intentionality and equity. So here is the technology plan. All students will have access to a computing device that can be used in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Dr. Stanford began the presentation by saying we want students to bring fully charged devices to the classrooms, because even Dr. Breeden alluded to it about the Office of Learning Technology. We're going to be integrating technology into our curriculum. So we want students to completely benefit from it. So every student will have an access to a computing device. We have established a consistent process for technology repairs and replacement. Yes, every student will have an access to a device, and these are mechanical devices. If something happens, they need to come up for a repair. We have established a consistent process with building leaders, the principals, so the students would exactly know what to do when they have a device up for repair or a damaged device. Okay, we have given every student a device, but they cannot do anything with their device without appropriate internet access. We know digital divide is a huge problem in Central Ohio, in our communities, and in the students and families we serve. So we have come up with multiple measures to conquer the digital divide. We're making internet access available for our students in buildings and also from home. We understand the name suggests digital divide, internet access is not equitable today in our students' homes and in the communities we serve. So how are we going to do it? One, we upgraded wireless access points in every classroom, in every school building, elementary to high school, pre-K through 12, so that students will have adequate coverage during their time in the school. And we are coming up with multiple strategies for providing access to students when they are at home. We have distributed over 5,000 hotspots to the students and families that needed internet access, but that is not the be all and end all of it. We're working with multiple partners like the City of Columbus and Smart Columbus. We are actually we're working with them, and we have distributed over 3,000 routers to 300 routers to 300 families, and what is called a private LTE network, where you have radio towers, and with the routers you can get internet access in your home. You don't have to have a hotspot. It is wireless internet access. We've actually distributed routers to 300 of our families. And that is the pilot. As the data comes in, we are working very closely with the City of Columbus in providing them, where there's a bigger density of our student populations, so they can continue to offer that coverage, that kind of home internet access coverage to our students and their families. We are working with the Franklin County Digital Coalition, which is organized. It is a group of about 27 organizations. We were one of the first members of that alliance, and we have been working with them closely to see how further can we bridge this digital divide for our students. So there are a lot more strategies that are in the works, but that will be available to our students and their families in the beginning of the school year. And we are also making sure when you're using your devices in schools or at home, our students have a safe and secure learning environment. We have put multiple internet filtering, so they cannot go to sites that they shouldn't be accessing, and will only be able to go to authorized sites by the school and the teachers, and what our curriculum allows for them to go to. And that they will have a safe and secure learning environment, away from predators and other cyber crime that occurs in an internet learning environment. That concludes my presentation. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Klarno to talk about summer training and fall sports.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. To say that the last year from an athletic standpoint was difficult would be a little bit of an understatement, but I want to send a big congratulations and thank you to all of our parents of student athletes, our coaches, our student athletes themselves, our athletic directors, for really all of the hard work that they pulled together to make this challenging year an opportunity and a possibility for our student athletes who came out and participated. We're going to take a lot of what we learned, obviously, and roll it right into our summer activities. And if someone would, thank you very much. So the reality is that while the hand sanitizing and the social distancing and the face mask are not completely behind us, those are still practices that we will have to adhere to and continue to try to do our part to get us out of this place that we're at, as a country. Coaches will have the opportunity this summer to work directly with their school athletic director and their principals to put together their plans for their summer activities in preparation for fall sports and ultimately also for winter sports. There are some winter sports that do things in the summer in preparation for their season. Coaches will obviously, they will put together those plans with their athletic director and they will be in compliance with all of the health and safety regulations that are in place. And it's just important that coaches and ADs and principals work together because when you have students on your campus, you want to make sure that your students have, just are there in a safe environment and they're following the protocols. So coaches understand those, but those things will obviously be reiterated and shared with them in preparation for the summer. As we transition from our summer workouts into our fall sports this season, we've already provided our coaches and our teams with their full schedules for the fall. So we're in preparation to have a full fall season of the fall sports that participate during that time period. Schedules for the fall season for those sports of football, football, soccer, volleyball, those things are underway and have already been set. Teams and coaches I know are excited about the start of the fall season. I met with football coaches within the last week or so, and they were all pretty excited to be able to get some things started up this summer. So that was really exciting to hear. And obviously our teams will still follow all the protocols that are in place to the fullest extent to be able to make sure that we don't have any interruptions, and hopefully that we're able to, enjoy the entire fall season. With that being shared, I get a chance to turn it over to Dr. Betty Hill now, who will share some of the non-sport extracurricular activities that the district will be participating in. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Clarno. And I am very excited to share this evening that following our current safety guidelines that all non-sport extracurricular activities will resume. Our summer activities will move forward with the current safety protocols in place, and they will include marching band and drill team. As in last season, our directors and our coaches, our drill team coaches, will submit individual practice and performance plans that adhere to the current health and safety protocols. And our directors and coaches will submit those to the Unified Arts Supervisor and their building principal. But we will move forward with what we've learned. What looks different this year is the plans for fall that will include the return to a full schedule and a full schedule of extracurricular activities, and more excitingly, district-wide student enrichment activities. So we're excited to get back to that. We will also continue to follow the art-specific health and safety protocols, and these include the usage of specialized face masks for instrumentalists, singers, and theater students. We'll continue to use bell covers for musical instruments. We'll limit the sharing of resources such as sheet music, instruments, theater and show choir props, uniforms, and performance attire. The district will supply additional PPE and instructional materials to support this effort. District uniforms, we're going to use them this year. I'm excited about that because we have brand new marching band uniforms. So we will be using our uniforms this year. Students will sign them out for the entire season and they'll get to wear their uniforms. Our activities will include live spectators as recommended by the CDC guidelines. So we will continue to follow the current CDC guidelines for live audiences and with additional guidance from the Ohio Department of Health for our arts events. So we're excited about all of these new developments, but we'll continue to monitor. With that, I now turn it over to Gary Bright in transportation.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Appreciate that. I'd be remiss if I didn't comment about President Adair's comments in the video that started out about her appreciation for transportation. That certainly warms our heart when the president of the board recognizes the hard work that our people do. And also the almost equally heartwarming for transportation when our CFO talks about bringing in new school buses. Nothing touches the heart of a bus driver greater than a new school bus. We recognize too, as Dr. Clarno mentioned, there will be similar precautions that we've had with COVID-19 moving forward. We have currently prepared for summer school routing, and we're just making a few tweaks. As been mentioned, that continues to grow so much, so we continue to expand the routing for that. And those precautions will be in place for summer school. Data is coming in now for the new school year, the 22 school year. And so our routers and supervisors are currently routing for the return of Woodcrest in full on July 29th and all CCS schools on August 26th. Also appreciate Mr. Odom, the COO, for continuing to pester Stan Bohoric to get those new buses. And I turn it over now to Mr. Odom.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. My task today is to talk about the facility readiness. And one of the things I want to mention, and Dr. Stafford mentioned earlier, this planning process, it's ongoing. It started last year and continue to be ongoing. Our focus in getting the facilities ready is to ensure all facilities are clean, safe, and healthy for students, staff, and visitors who enter our facilities. In order to do that, when we look at our classroom preventions, the focus would be to set up the desk to accommodate all class sizes. Students and staff will continue to wear masks when they return in the summer as well as in the fall. And we will put sneeze guard barriers on all student desks as well as the teacher desk as an added layer of protection. We also, from a health and safety measure, will make sure that we continue to have personal protective equipment at all of our district facilities, including our school buses. That would include hand sanitizers as well as masks would be available, just to name a few. We also will focus on cleaning and disinfecting. I'd just like to make note of as well. In our cleaning process, we do use a hospital grade disinfectant. And as well as when we go through and clean in the summer process cleaning, we do what we call a total deep clean, or I like to call terminal clean from a hospital term, where we pull all furniture, all items out of the room. We sanitize and disinfect, clean and disinfect those areas. And then we go from the top of the ceiling down of cleaning lights, washing walls, all the way down to the cleaning and shining of the floor. All schools will continue to have separation rooms identified and be in every school. Water fountains, we are disabled, the standard water fountains, but where we have bottled water filling stations, we will be able to utilize those. And over the summer, we are adding additional water bottle filling stations in many of our schools. In ventilation, over the summer, we will have our maintenance guys continue to go through and inspect and making sure all of our air intake systems are bringing in fresh air. We'll continue during the school year to continue our same process of making sure fresh air is being brought in 2 hours minimum prior to students enter and 2 hours when students leave the facility for the day. Also, we'll make sure the appropriate signage is up and out throughout the facilities. As we continue to prepare for facility rentals, and as we prepare for the summer, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, indoor facility rentals throughout CCS buildings would not be permitted over the summer until further notice. And when we will update the district website as soon as we're able to safely permit indoor facility rentals. At this time, I would turn it over to Mr. Chris Ward for Safety and Security.
All right, so good evening, everyone. And I just wanted to share with you a few highlights from the Office of Safety and Security for the upcoming school year. So we're really excited for the upcoming school year. Next slide, please. We're excited for the upcoming school year. And just a few highlights here. We will be hiring, training, and assigning 20 additional safety and security personnel to our school buildings. We want to make sure that we continue to provide a safe environment for our students and staff. And as we look at the needs of our district, we will make sure that our staff are assigned accordingly. So we are excited for the additional 20 safety and security staff that will be joining us for the upcoming school year. We will also be revising and updating our emergency operation procedures and safety plans as we continue to look at CDC guidelines and district guidelines regarding student safety, regarding COVID-19, and making sure that our kids are wearing masks and doing those things to keep them safe. We will add those procedures into our new emergency procedures and safety plans throughout the district. We will continue to install digital cameras, looking at access control devices and other physical security to ensure that our buildings are safe, not just from a presence of security staff, but also just from physical security and those things that continue to help keep our community safe while students and staff are working and learning in our school buildings. We will also upgrade our communication devices. We'll continue to assess our buildings for radio upgrades, equipment upgrades, and other software solutions that will continue to improve our communication internally and externally, and most importantly, to make sure that when emergency services are needed, that we can communicate clearly and effectively with them so that they can arrive as quickly as possible. And we also understand the importance of training and professional development. And so we will collaborate with Franklin University over the course of the summer and into the new school year, along with Ohio Department of Education, as we continue to work on those things that will grow our security staff. We have a pretty robust training schedule that we will be putting together. A lot of the training will be put on our PSW training site so that our staff, along with teachers, administrators, will be able to access those trainings. The trainings will be self-paced, and for our teachers and administrators, they will be able to get CEUs from the trainings. So we are excited. We're partnering with Franklin University, who will have a lot to offer Columbus City Schools. And so we're really excited with the things that we're looking to do in the coming months in the next school year. With that being said, I will turn the presentation over to our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Stanford.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. As we look to go into the fall school year, we know one of the most important recommendations from the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, and for Columbus Public Health is that you create a layered mitigation strategy and plan for students and staff in the school district. In addition to a layered mitigation strategy, we also have a layered monitoring strategy in the district. So what does that COVID-19 mitigation and monitoring layered strategy look like? Well, first and foremost, we will continue to follow the 3 W's. What are the 3 W's? Wear a mask, wash your hands regularly, and watch your distance. Secondly, we will continue to implement the OSU CATS monitoring system that we adopted earlier this year. Our internal team of 4 team members monitor that data on a weekly basis. And the way the system works, if they identify anomalies with the spread of COVID-19 in the district, they will then bring together a larger team to identify whether or not that anomaly is being driven by COVID-19 or if there are other explanations for the anomaly in the data. And so we've been very happy with the way the CATS monitoring has progressed this semester, and we are looking forward to continue working with OSU to have it for our students and staff members in the fall. Contact tracing is another important monitoring part of our system that we will continue to implement so that when someone is identified to have tested positive, you know, our nurses go through that extensive process of identifying who are other individuals who may have come into contact with that person. When we have completed the contact tracing, then we will provide family and caregiver notifications. We have provided that this entire school year of the 2021 school year, and we will continue that process in the fall. We are also in conversation with Nationwide Children's Hospital to continue the COVID testing program for our students. It has been a program that has worked well this spring, and so we're going to work with Nationwide to continue that program in the fall. And we are also in conversation with Nationwide Children's Hospital, and Columbus Public Health reached out to us as well about COVID-19 vaccinations. As most of us already know, the CDC is looking to expand the vaccinations to students who are between the ages of 12 and 16. And so, you know, having a plan to make sure that we can offer the vaccinations to as many of the students in that age group as possible is going to be very important. And hopefully we will be able to also continue to provide vaccinations or have a plan for providing vaccinations to those students who were in the first cohort of being 16 years old and older. And so that is our COVID-19 multi-layered mitigation and monitoring strategies that we will use for the fall. And now I will turn it over to Mr. John Dean, our Director of Employee Relations, to give a high-level overview of the collective bargaining process as well.
All right.
Mr. Dean?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sanford. The goal of this entire reopening plan was to accomplish as much of it as possible within the confines of the current collective bargaining agreements. That is to have as few exceptions as possible as we put these plans together. So within that expectation, labor management employee relations serves two roles. One, internal consultant working with the offices and divisions to review plans, make suggestions, and offer an opinion on whether something can be done within the confines of the collective bargaining agreement, which leads to the second role, which is external liaison with our labor partners. It is keeping them informed of the plans and our thought processes on these processes, and then also engaging in formal negotiations where there is a deviation from the terms of a negotiated agreement, so that impacts an employee's terms and conditions of employment. So that is what we have been engaged in to support this plan. And at this point, I will turn it back to Dr. Sanford for questions on this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Madam President, members of the Board of Education, that concludes our presentation this evening, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, team. I do know we have some questions, and I'm sure board members will let me know if they have more, but we will start with Board Member Ragland and then go to Board Member Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Appreciate all of your team for a very thorough presentation on reopening. Want to just say up front that obviously this is not set in stone. Obviously will be subject to change based on everything that we know can and might happen moving forward. But with some of the things that were said, I have a couple of questions and really maybe some comments or some suggestions. First and foremost, regarding the Chromebooks, have we identified a preferred protective book bag that students would be able to use moving forward? The reason I'm asking this question, we know as reopening plans are going to be announced, our community, one of the things that I see here in Columbus that we don't necessarily see all over the country, but our community does an exceptional job of doing book bag drives for our students. We have local television networks. Pretty much every single community organization has some sort of book bag school supply drive. Understanding the importance of our Chromebooks and the fact that we've made such a substantial investment in them, I would hope that we would have a preferred, very protective book bag that we can articulate to our partners immediately. So as they engage in their book bag drives, which have become a corporate process, really. I mean, they buy them in bulk, and it's a very corporate process. I would hope that we would be able to accommodate the book bags for our children. Have we done that? And is that something that that we think that we can do so that our students are using book bags that can include their Chromebooks and they can transport them, knowing students will do what students will do and protect our investment as we move forward? That goes to anyone in the administration who might be able to answer that.
Thank you, Board Member Ragland. This is Vandana. I can answer that. We have collected enough data from all the repairs and damages we're seeing, and we have some recommendation for protective cases. We are also working simultaneously on our long-term one-to-one plan, and we are actually going to pilot it the summer school. So that's new news, great news. And we're actually piloting it with the protective cases. So through the summer school, we can collect the data. So we'll know exactly what we need for our students in the fall.
And if I can also, if I could piggyback on to the CIO's comments, I think as you've already mentioned, Board Member Ragland, this will be a wonderful opportunity for members of our corporate community to make donations and to help us with providing those type of cases, for our students. And so I'm pretty sure our engagement team will be reaching out to our corporate partners in the city to help us with that.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Stanford. And I'm going to just go out on a limb and speak for all of my colleagues on the board. We'd be willing to do whatever we could to make sure that we would go out to our partners within the community and support your effort in that. Protective cases, book bags, all of those things are going to be very important for our students. My next question is probably going to go to you, Ms. Vierny. You mentioned the wireless access points within all of our buildings. My question is specifically around our legacy buildings and some of the older buildings that are here within the district. We know that there are probably common areas in a lot of those buildings where we do have really good access, but there are also some nooks and crannies within those buildings that might not give us the best possible access to wireless service. Are we doing anything extra to identify some of those areas within our older buildings and then beef up our wireless access points in those schools?
Yes, Board Member Ragland, I can answer that. That's what we went through. We went through a fine tooth comb into every one of our buildings, all of our 109 schools, elementary and high schools, and we have put an access point in every single classroom, and as well as in some of the common areas. And we are going to use the summer for the administrative buildings. We prioritized our students first and our schools first, and we went and did that. And we actually, because we were remote learning, we were able to do a lot of work in the schools and add those access points. So yes, I can say for certain that we have added multiple access points, and each school has a dedicated 1 gig internet line as well. And there is 10 gig coming now into our schools for distribution. So yeah, I can say for certain we are ready for that. In the classroom, they're going to not have any spotty internet access.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And lastly, my last question goes to Mr. Ward, and maybe this is something that the superintendent may want to address. As we know, our partners at City Council and the Mayor's office are negotiating with the Fraternal Order of Police right now on an overall contract. Within that contract is probably going to include some language around the potential for school resource officers for Columbus City Schools. Should that contract process not conclude before the school year starts, and we're back in person 5 days a week, do we have a contingency plan to open our schools without SROs? And what specifically are we going to do in some of our more challenging schools where we know that the increase in security is going to be necessary?
So Board Member Ragland, I can answer that. Thank you. We wanted to be proactive this coming school year because we didn't know exactly where things would lie in terms of our SRO program, which at this point has not been fully decided. And so part of our plan was to hire additional safety and security staff so that we can prepare for this coming school year. So with the additional 20 safety and security personnel that we have, one of the things we will definitely do before we assign any staff is look at our district needs and see what school building may need more support than others. We do a pretty good job working with the area superintendents and the building administrators to make sure that those buildings who may need some additional support will have the necessary support that they need. So we will constantly evaluate, reevaluate where we are in terms of making sure our buildings are safe moving forward, with or without SROs.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ward. Do you believe that 20 is enough?
So at this point, 20 is what I had asked for this coming school year. One of the things I've been tasked with is putting together a 5-year plan and see what that looks like moving forward. So I will tell you, this school year, we will be fortunate to have 20 security staff join our team. But we do have plans beyond the 2022 school year for additional security support as well. So we're constantly reevaluating. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern, yes, sir, thank you. My concern is that I don't believe that, I mean, that's not a one-to-one transfer with the number of school resource officers going out and then having an additional 20 coming in. That's number one. And then I would, my question to you is I know that's what you asked for.
Yes.
But realistically, do you feel it is enough? And the reason I'm speaking it like this, Mr. Ward, is because now is the time for us to really engage in this conversation while the community backs an additional increase of our own safety and security, officers. And if 20 is not enough, I would rather know that 20 is not enough and you'd like to have more so that we can do our job to get you to that number, as opposed to you just asking for what you think we may be able to get. I want to make certain if 20 is not the number, tell me what you feel the number is.
So thank you, Board Member Ragland, for the question. So allow me to do this if I could. And so while I don't want to make that decision in isolation, I think it's very important that we as a district look at what our needs are. So if in fact, and also speaking and talking with our building administrators as well too, and our area superintendents and our cabinet. So I think it's important that we sit down collectively and talk about, okay, if we could have everything we need moving forward, what would that look like? And so I think that would be the best way to go. What I don't want to do is throw out an artificial number now, and that's not what we really need, because beyond just having safety and security staff in our buildings, there may be some other resources that we need that will work alongside safety and security, along with other support programs. So I think it's important that we really sit down and plan exactly what we need if we do not have our SROs returning for the coming school year. But I'm confident that we can sit down and we can talk about that and come up with a good plan.
Let me just jump in and be absolutely 100% clear. There is no contract right now with the Columbus Police Department. And we know that because we did not renew it from last summer, right? And so we also have all that work we did with the community, and we have that work, just as Mr. Ward rightly said, it's going to be with the Culture and Climate Committee to take this holistic look at it. So I want to make sure that we're still all on the same page about where we are as a district with the SRR situation and how we are viewing safety and security. Mr. Ragland, your comment at the very beginning almost made it sound like we were definitely making a contract, and I just want to make sure that that no decision has been made by this board yet. We have to come to the public to vote. We have to come to a meeting like this and vote on a contract. And so I just want to make that clear that we're very much still in the process of figuring that out. And we have that work that's being done with the committee that's being led by Board Member Beckley. So I just want to make sure that we're all very clear about what's happening with that situation, since that is a very hot topic in the community. Mr. Ragland,
I was very clear in stating that, yeah, hold on. I was very clear in stating that that process is underway with the city council and the mayor. That is their job to do that. we don't have school resource officers in our building today. I asked about a contingency plan. Should that process not be concluded by the beginning of our school year? I was very specific in my language. So there's, you know, in mind you, no decision has been made. There is, we are not on the same page as a board regarding this issue. And so no decision has been made. I'm asking about contingency with us opening up and we don't have a contract. And I'm asking Mr. Ward very specifically, if 20 additional school resource security officers are enough. And if they aren't enough, to come back with the number that he needs for school security officers.
Yep.
Yes, I understand we may need more.
Board Member Ragland, we are not in
other-
conflict. I just want to make sure that the community is fully understanding where we are as an organization. So that's exactly right. That's exactly what you said. I'm not saying you said something different. I'm just trying to be 100% transparent with the community so they understand what's going on. So you asked Mr. Ward about what was needed because we do not have a contract with in the SRO program right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have-
And I'm asking Mr. Ward that question specifically because I want to know with security officers. I understand the other side. I understand the social and emotional. I understand the psychologist. I understand more counselors.
Board Member Ragland,
all of it.
Board Member Ragland, what I'm saying is this work is being done. Mr. Ward is working with the Culture and Climate Committee. And that is being done at that level, and we'll come back to this board with any recommendation that we need. So this is such an important topic, and literally we could talk about it all night, but this is not what is on the agenda. So I would like to just, if you have any other topics you would like to ask the superintendent about from her reopening plan, and then you can work with Board Member Beckerly to make sure that we're getting this information around so Culture and Climate can consider. Do you have other questions?
No, my questions are concluded.
Did we just lose Board Member Ragland? Okay, I think we just actually lost him completely. I did not do that. There he is.
My questions are my questions are concluded, Board President. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we will move to Board Member Brown, then Board Member Beckerly.
Okay. Yeah, my space bar won't get me unmuted. Anyway, I've just got a few questions. The first, I believe, for John Stanford, who initiated, at the very beginning, talked about some of the program and how we're going to reopen, including that students will be expected to bring their devices to school every day, fully charged. My question for Dr. Stanford is, how are teachers and principals going to manage that? I think we can safely assume that there will be a percentage of students who just don't get that done for whatever reason. Are there plans for how we deal with all of those?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Brown. Teachers and principals are very agile professionals in our school buildings, and I'm certain that if students and you're absolutely right. What I tried to communicate is that this is an expectation that we want students and our families, to adhere to during the school year. But we realize that it may not happen. And if a student comes in, we've got plenty of outlets in our buildings. They can just plug it in and be ready to go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted really to make sure that that had been considered and discussed. Second, for Dr. Breeden, I've got a couple of questions. And number one, I am really excited about everything you spoke about. The blended and the accelerated learning. It all sounds really good. My question then is, how do we inform and train all of our teachers, all of our staff? How do we train them to be able to implement this accelerated learning? What's needed to get there?
Many of our teachers, are trained in this, but the other thing is we have a lot of professional development that has been going on all year preparing for this. We also are going to be doing more training this summer. And also with our learning management system, which I spoke to briefly, many people like 3 different delivery paths for training. They like face-to-face, some people like doing it alone, and some people like doing it with a group. So everything that we're doing around training is focused on that. It is part of being an artful teacher to understand that. We do provide resources. As you saw, the MTSS, it's really do this and that. We also are stepping up our efforts for instructional coaching. We are working with all of our coaches. We're developing a model of coaching so that everyone will get the coaching they need. Some people want coaching a lot. Some people don't want coaching. And so we're trying to think, how can we get to all of our teachers? So strengthening our coaching, providing professional development different ways, and also working with our principals, and if they need help, deploying people to assist them.
Thank you. That's helpful. And as I said, I really like how this program, the academics and focus on academics is shaping up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. Board Member Beckerly.
Just a couple of observations. One is, I think that, this is all new for us with our students having devices. And so we're concerned about the backpacks and the charging and all of that. But I think that, there are other districts and other schools that, they've been up and running with one-on-one devices all the time. So I think that, we can handle this. I think it's just, it's something new, and our kids will rise to it. And it will be a wonderful thing because it's going to really enhance our instruction. I'm really excited about that. The second thing, and this is part observation and part seeking some confirmation from Dr. Dixon and Chris Ward. I think that it's important that we understand that, and I think I'm right about this, and this is where the confirmation comes in, is that while the SROs may have served certain functions in our buildings, I don't want the public or the board or anyone to have the impression that they were sort of the but for in keeping the peace in our building. They were just part of a team. And I'd like to just say that publicly and have Dr. Dixon and Mr. Ward confirm that, because they weren't, and I know this from having been in a building actually where we had a wonderful SRO. So this is not coming down on an issue one way or another, just more of a sense of what's going on day to day in our high schools. While they may have been helpful, they may have been part of the process, they aren't the but for in terms of maintaining safety. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Beckerly. And you're right. When we think about the network of support around our schools, safety and security is part of that support. And one thing that we've been advocating for and had in this district for years, even when I was here as a principal, is safety and security personnel who built relationships with our school and the school community. And our SROs were just yet another part of
like
that.
A layer. It's almost like the COVID thing, layers, right?
Yeah, another layer. So right, I too don't want the public to have a perception that, one, safety and security is a priority It's been a priority. And as you recall, to remind the public that during the first year, we increased safety and security personnel in the district based on a conversation I had with Chris Ward and said, what do you need? What additional support that you need in your buildings? And the board approved a large number of safety and security staff that started the school year FY 19-20. And then recently we had a conversation with Mr. Ward and his team and said, what additional support do you need? Because we don't want to rely on any one person to provide any one resource in our schools. We want to make sure that our schools have what they need, if it's from safety and security personnel, if it's social workers, it's psychologists, what do our school communities need to make sure we have that support for our students and our teachers. So again, thank you for that clarification. That is one layer. We are continuing to monitor and getting and finding out additional information from Chris and his team. But we just had this conversation last month and asked that question, will there be additional support needed if we decide to go in a different direction for this fall, as we continue to have the conversation about SROs being a part of our school community moving forward. So does that answer? Would you like some more? Would you like?
No, that's
okay. That's okay. Thank
that's
you.
good.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Oh, okay. You stayed muted. You stayed open, so I wasn't sure you were done. Okay.
Oh no, that's just, that's operator error.
All right. Thank you. We will go to Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much, and thank you, administration, for this presentation. So I've been keeping notes throughout this time and try to put all of my questions in buckets. So I want to start with, we'll just stay with safety. I feel at a point in our conversation, we were conflating SROs with our safe school strategy. And I think it's important to keep those in a balanced perspective. And so with that balanced perspective in mind, I would like to know, how are we planning to move forward proactively to ensure that our buildings are outfitted with multiple swipe points at doors, to ensure that I've been in conversation with a number of districts that have a spotter system. So if a door is open, the office is alerted as soon as that back door is open. If a door is open for so long, people are alerted that there's a door that's open. How are we moving forward to proactively get systems such as that into our buildings? Again, noting that we want to make sure that we're creating safe environments for our staff, students, and family members.
Dr. Pierce and board members, to your question, so each of our school buildings have door alarms on the buildings. We've outfitted every school building with door alarms. And so that should someone either exit or enter our school building, that alarm will sound. It's an audible sound, and security staff or those assigned staff will go to that location. But each of those doors are also, there's a camera that's on each door as well too. So we would know that. The only doors that would not have the alarm systems would be those doors that we use for continuous access, building access, the front door, and maybe a side door. But what I will tell you is our building is always on a level 1 lockdown, which means our door should be locked at all times unless there is a security, I'm sorry, not a security staff, but a building staff who is present, watching the door, watching the access of people coming in the doors. Also, we've outfitted many of our buildings with vestibules. And there's an ongoing project right now to make sure that all of our buildings, new and old buildings, have these vestibules. So we continue to look at technology. We continue to look at manpower. We continue to look at software. What's available? What are some of the best strategies out there to keep our students and staff safe?
I appreciate that. So I've been in multiple buildings, just kind of, I pop up in buildings and throughout the communities to check on our schools. And I've seen number of doors that don't actually have those alarms. So it would be great if we could do an audit to make sure that, again, all of our doors have those alarms and that we do have multiple swipe points. And I'll just give an example. If you have a teacher that walks out to a field area to help a student and that door shuts and they do have their key card to get in, but there's no swipe point, then that teacher has to walk all the way around to the door that has the swipe point. So I just think it might be something for us to audit and look into. How can we make sure that our buildings are outfitted and up to date with that protective technology?
Definitely.
Thank you. Awesome. My next questions then relate to technology. So as we're talking about, students bringing fully charged Chromebooks back, protective cases and book bags, my question is really, kids break stuff and stuff happens. If a student comes to school with a broke Chromebook, are they to turn that into the office and then wait for somebody in our district IT to fix that? Have we identified preferred vendors that we can work with collaboratively as a district, that schools can work with collaboratively, that parents can work with collaboratively? So when a Chromebook or a technology device is damaged, it can be fixed immediately and students won't have to wait for that repair to happen.
So Dr. Pierce, I can answer that question today. Even today, when the students turn in a damaged device, they don't have to wait for a repair. We give them a replacement so their learning can continue and we repair it in the back end. And, so we have working Chromebooks that we replace for a student and we'll repair this Chromebook for the next replacement. It goes into the replacement stock. And in the future, yes, we are working with vendors like Microsoft and iPad. This is for our future long-term plan where, we actually buy insurance from them. And so they'll give up to 3 replacement devices for a device or some such plan that we'll work with the vendors on. For repairs, they have to be authorized repair folks, and a lot of our techs are certified authorized repair personnel. So there is a lot of warranty items involved here. We can't just work with any third party. So there is so much, I wouldn't call it red tape or bureaucracy, but there's a lot of fine print involved here that, that is why we have the plan we have today. Did it answer your question or?
No, so let me ask the question differently. My 11-year-old walks into a building on Monday morning and her Chromebook starts acting up. The teacher says, hey, we can get this fixed. One, yeah, is there an extra Chromebook in the classroom and in the building that student can have access to? And 2, is there a preferred vendor in the building immediately that device is given to that can start working on it? Because it sounds like you take the device in, it comes to the district office, then it's fixed and sent back to the student. What I'm asking is there a process as soon as my student starts to have an issue with the Chromebook within the building, it's fixed, or we can connect the families, the school to vendors where they can quickly access devices that will work immediately in that time frame?
Like I said, the techs are in the buildings. They can immediately take it, and not all Chromebooks are taken to the central office for repair. Those that can be repaired at the site are being repaired at the site and handed over back to the building leadership. Only those that are beyond repair at the site that need spare parts come to Kingswood. So most of the techs are advised to repair them in the building so that, it's worked on as soon as they can. The techs go to every school. Each tech is up to 4 schools. So they go to every school multiple times a week, and they can repair it. Those that can be repaired immediately, right? Like there is a login that doesn't work or the charger is broke. Those things are addressed right away. Only the thing, you have a very shattered screen and I need to replace the screen, that comes back to Kingswood. But even those are returned as soon as possible. sometimes we are talking about 100, 200 Chromebooks coming back for repair. That's a huge volume. Yes, we don't have a vendor program right now because we cannot have it due to our warranties and other things at work. We already pay for those repairs up front. So that is why we don't have the program, but we can look into it.
Awesome. So now that I know we have techs, it would be great if we could do a cost benefit analysis to see if we could lessen or decrease the number of schools that those techs are at, if they're moved from 4 to maybe 2. Because as we start to bring all these students back in and they're there 5 days a week, we're going to have issues where students are going to have, broken screens, chargers not working, any and everything. And I just think on our part, it would be beneficial to have accessible techs that can immediately respond, especially if we're not sure that we have extra Chromebooks and devices to pass out. When it comes to our school supply list, and I know Deputy Superintendent Dr. Stanford mentioned that we have lots of outlets. Well, I've been in airports. I'm at the Ohio State University, and it's just my luck that sometimes I'm looking for outlets. So is there any way we can update those school supply lists to include extension cords, surge plugs, and all of those things, so our class are outfitted?
Actually, the schools still have some Chromebooks and they have cards. Each card can hold up to 40 Chromebooks that can be charged at the same time. So yes, that comes with the surge protector and that's built in. So the cards themselves, up to 40 Chromebooks can be plugged into one card.
So all of our schools have accessible Chrome cards with 40 Chromebooks on them, each and every one of our schools.
That can charge up to 40 Chromebooks, yes.
Yeah, so, okay. So you can never have too many extension cords, surge. I just,
we can supply them as needed. And to answer your question about more techs, having accessibility to more techs in the buildings, that's part of something we're considering kind of contracting as part of the ESSER2 funding. So that's a good idea. We're considering that because they're spread thin today. So if we can get some temporary help, that'd be nice.
And let's think creatively about that. We have Microsoft certification programs in our schools. Maybe we can start training some of our high school students to be technicians and work on these computers. So I'm sure there's ways that we can be creative with that as we move forward. And again, I'm very concerned that we're going to need more outlets and plugs. So if we could encourage people that as they're doing these school supply drives to put that on the list and encourage parents to give that, I think we can never have too many outlets. Keeping with technology, you mentioned that there's multiple access points in a building. Access points are great. What we need is speed, right? I want to know that as 40 to 60 students on, the north side of a building go to a particular web page, and, a teacher on another end of a building goes to a particular web page, that everybody has quick speed, right? It's not always about the access, it's about the speed at which your devices are running, right? So are we assessing and auditing the speed at which devices are connecting, staying connected, and really creating the infrastructure that our students and our staff need to teach and learn?
Absolutely. We are continuously monitoring it. If you look at any school site, even during in the cohorts being there and using their Chromebooks, they're barely using 10 to 30% of the internet speed available to them. So we have high speed internet to every one of our school buildings, and we just doubled that speed from 5 gig to 10 gig this year. So we have, we are monitoring it continuously. And if we see a school is near threshold, we immediately try to increase their speed. We are able to throttle them up for speed, but we haven't hit that in all these months that the students have been back in hybrid.
Okay. But again, this is going to be unique. Once we go back to that 5 days and they're all there with those devices, right? You're continually going to have teachers that really leverage that technology. And so I can anticipate that we'll hit that threshold, and I'm happy that we're monitoring it in that way. And I think we also have to be mindful that students may come in with our Chromebooks, but then they're also, going to have their cell phones. They might have their iPads. So you're going to have multiple devices with one person going. I mean, at all times, I'm carrying 6 devices with me every day, right? So, you know, our students, I'm sure some of them are up to 3 or 4. So,
Absolutely. And that's why we have different wireless networks for each of those devices. Our devices will log into a certain wireless network, and personal devices like cell phones need to log into CCS Personal. So we have multiple wireless networks as well available for that purposes.
oh, I like that. So are we informing our staff and our students of those multiple access?
Yeah, they know, and they can't even get into CCS Private if it's not our device. They'll have to use CCS Personal.
Awesome. My last bucket of questions then relate to our teachers, our educators. So we've rolled out this plan for returning back to the fall. Do we have buy-in from our teachers union, from CEA, from OPC? Are they at the table? Have they shared that they are pleased with this plan and rollout?
Can we go back to John Dean's presentation that he presented on earlier, Mr. Dean?
Yes, absolutely. We are in regular contact with our labor partners. We have reached out and briefed them on the vision for Blend Ed, for example. For those portions of the plan that require negotiations, I am in contact with the CEA president to set dates for formal discussions on it. And we are working through that and are committed to having those conversations with our labor partners to ensure that we have that buy-in and that support from the labor partners.
So I appreciate that. The reason I asked that question is as we think about the components of this presentation, we're ramping up with our summer school. Normally we have a really robust and engaging summer conference for our educators. It used to be Reimagine Me. How are we fitting that training into our summer school schedule? And then when we talk about the lessons learned from stakeholders, we really have to think about our recruitment strategy for getting those full-time teachers for Blend Ed. And so to me, all of this goes hand in hand with really having open, transparent conversations with our labor partners. So I just want to make sure that we have that buy-in, that we're forward and proactively thinking, because those 3, it's key and critical. We still have to find time to put in that summer training while our educators are teaching summer school, while they're prepping and gearing up to do Blend Ed classes, which at this point until 2023, that will be an additional contract for them. So they're doing that on top of their regular work. We're giving our educators a tremendous workload this summer and moving into the fall.
We are going to have some supplemental contracts next year in Blend Ed, but we are going to have full-time teachers dedicated too, because we know exactly what you're saying. People are tired, and it's a lot to ask for a teacher to teach all day and then to do digital academy at night. So we heard that feedback. And as we have designed this, we have tried to stay, and I believe, John, this was one of your points, tried to really focus on the contract that exists and try to work our plan so there are few exceptions to that.
And then my last question, I appreciate the fact that we were able to see a 600 jump in our summer school registration, that we have 600 students enrolled in summer school. My concern is, are those students our most vulnerable students? Are we saving space for the students who need to be in the classroom, recouping that learning and instruction time that for whatever reason has been lost? Are we saving spots for our most vulnerable babies?
I see that my very competent executive directors are on. So Elise and Kira, if you'd like to respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're up to 3,800, but we have many more spots. So as I said, even though elementary, I think our elementary parents have really tried to take advantage, but we still have over 1,000 slots. And then for middle and high school, which I think middle school is going to be really critical. And when we look at our numbers for our high school students as well. So we have many, many open spots. We are not in any way discriminating in terms of who can attend summer school. So that is definitely open. And then when we talk about, there also are students that have been, and I guess targeted, if you will, departmentally. So when we look at our newcomer population, our ESL department has reached out. They are looking at that critical mass to make sure. And then in special education, our program is inclusive, but when we talk about some of our more complex needs students, again, families are being contacted individually for those groups of students. And again, our overall program includes any student. And yes, we have plenty of openings. So one thing we haven't had is someone to say, I couldn't get in because there was no space. So,
and I guess I want to echo what Board Member Beckerly just put in the chat box. You know, it's really about how we're reaching those vulnerable students, right? Because as I think about our athletes who, again, will be doing sports and may not, want to give the time to summer school because maybe they have multiple competing things that are going on. You want to work a job, you want to play a sport. Do you have time to go to school? Well, we want them to make time to go to school. So it's really, if the teacher isn't able to make that contact, but that student is on the targeted list, and are we sending our engagement department out to knock on doors, or what's our strategy for getting them in the building and keeping them engaged throughout the summer? I would just like more information.
Well, I would first like to say, remember we said from the very beginning, we're targeting 10,000 students for our summer program. And what we're facing across the country, across the state. I was just on a Zoom meeting prior, and from superintendents from urban districts in Ohio, it's the same scenario. How do we get more kids engaged in summer schools? And they are not seeing a large increases as they anticipated. So what we have done, we have radio announcements, we have billboards that are up throughout the city. Our principals are working with with their parents, making sure they're reaching out. We have some schools that have up to 200 or more students already signed up. And do we have some schools that have lower numbers? And so Dr. Chapman and the area superintendents are working with those school principals and making sure that they increase those numbers and making sure that families know that one is free, two, that we want our students there, and that's why we were calling it too a summer experience. How do we make sure that the learning is fun yet rigorous, and all of our students have an opportunity to attend? So those families that are listening, please go to the website, sign your students up. We want them to attend. We have spots available. It's going to be an absolutely wonderful experience in person with your teachers in small groups. We want our students to explore COSI. They're going to go to the zoo. They're going to go to the libraries, the museum. It's going to be an awesome learning experience for our students. And we know that our teachers are sending information out. Our principals are sending information out. Our area superintendents are working along with our instructional team. So we are targeting. We want our parents to send the kids to us. Please, this is going to be a great opportunity for them.
I love that commercial, Dr. Dixon. All I needed you to do was to end it with and say, we've incentivized it, and we're also payments to students for grades or something. I've seen that happen in districts. So I'm not sure it's going to happen. I'm not sure what districts are doing, but I will say there is a partnership with Franklin County Job and Family Services that Alicia Gillison is working with our team. And so she is going to partner that group of people with our high school principals and to provide that opportunity for our students. So they are providing something for some incentivizing
for our seniors, and the district will help them, assist them with meeting with our principals so that they can meet with our kids. So our job is to get our kids to the finish line. We're going to make sure our students have that pathway, and that they have their courses done online, that we get them all the way done. Even if they don't get done in June, they'll be done in August. And if there are other programs who would like to partner with us to incentivize, we are so open to making sure that they partner with our students and their families, so that families can understand what that partnership will look like and what students need to do to meet that expectation of that partner. So thank you for bringing that up.
Awesome. Dr. Pierce, how many, are you almost finished with questions? Because I'd like to kind of move us along a little bit.
No, that's what I was saying. Those are all of my questions. Great way to end that whole portion. Thank you, Dr. Dixon and team.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. I don't believe there are any additional questions from board members. Yes, I'm looking around. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Dixon and team. I'm excited we're going back full time. It's obviously a lot of work has been done on these plans, and back to something that board member Ragland kind of started off at the beginning. We still know plans are flexible because we are still in COVID, but we are very excited about what we have, and I hope the community is excited as well. So check it all out on our webpage, right? One-stop shop. You can find all information about school reopening, and please register for summer school. Okay, or summer experience. My daughter gets mad when I call it summer school. It's not summer school, it's summer experience. Okay, excellent. All right, so board members, we actually have to go back up to item 5 because I accidentally skipped it. I got so excited to hear from our direct reports. So we're going to go back up to item 5, which is the public hearing on reemployment of a retired employee. And so I will open the public meeting on the reemployment of Cheryl L. Stevens. We actually have had no one sign up to speak about this. So I will now close the public meeting. And we can now move on. That's literally what I forgot to do. So there we are. Okay. Let's go ahead and move now into board matters. And the first item on board matters is 9.1. We have the second reading of the proposed amendments to the charter of the Policy Review Committee. I will turn it over to board member Brown.
Thank you. This will be the second reading of our charter, the name and changes to the charter itself that the Policy Review Committee has recommended to this board. Presented it a few weeks ago. I have heard nothing whatsoever from any of you since that time or from anybody else. If you recall, this particular charter renames the committee as the Governance Policy and Advocacy Committee. I guess we may need to figure out a new acronym, but that's beside the point. And we've made some very thoughtful and good changes in this policy, both to align better with our strategic plan and our portrait of a graduate and other things, and to include the reorganization that we've gone through with committees. And this committee is very thoughtful. We spent our entire last meeting talking through all of this. So with that, I would move to approve this policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. There it is. Will you please call the roll, Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Vice President
Yes.
Reyes?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you for all your work on that policy, old policy review committee, now the new committee. That is a very excellent and thoughtful committee. And so thank you, board members who are part of that. And this is the first, that's a gentle reminder that we'll be seeing other readings coming soon, I know, from our other committees. So good job, the old policy review committee, for being the first to get yours done. Yay. Okay. We're going to now move on to the consent agenda. This evening, our consent agenda consists of items 11.1 to 24.2. Any member may request an item be removed from the consent agenda. Is there an item anyone would like removed this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on any items in the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland,
Yes.
Vice President Reyes,
Yes.
President Adair,
Yes, with the exception of item 20.1, from which I abstain.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you so much. All right. We're going to now move into board announcements. Does any member of the board have an announcement this evening? Board Member Brown.
All right, let me start over. I guess I was talking to myself for a moment. I actually have two things I wanted to talk about. One, I had thought about for the last couple of days and wanted to speak to tonight. But we've just had a new issue emerge that I believe requires our immediate attention and action. And this pertains to some information that we'd received about the president of the Ohio School Boards Association. He happens to be a member of his own Mad River local school board. He was in his school board meeting responding and talking about a newsletter that a board committee had published. And he was very angry and unhappy and spoke out against the article. I believe it was a poem. In any case, Mr. Huddle, in his lengthy talk, and I listened to all of it in the board meeting, denies the existence of systemic racism, and he fears that something that he describes as critical race theory is invading our nation's colleges and schools, and that he's very upset about that. Huddle, there have now been two very recent stories in the Dayton Daily News, and they're consistent with everything I heard at the school board meeting, where he likened parts of the newsletter to critical race theory. He said critical race theory is reverse race discrimination and akin to education under the Nazis, and that it will soon be forced upon the nation's students. This was very troubling and bothersome to me. This is something that made me angry. And I really don't get angry very often, but this did. And I think that I know that there are other groups talking about this and about doing something. But from my perspective, I believe that we should be promptly calling for Mr. Huddle to step down and resign his position with the Ohio School Boards Association. And from my perspective, again, if he doesn't do that, I think that we as a school board should consider withdrawing our membership from the Ohio School Boards Association. I think that not calling him out, not standing up and speaking truth is tantamount to agreeing with what he had to say. I invite other board members to weigh in and provide their thoughts, but I couldn't let this go.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. Are there any thoughts on this particular topic? So, Board Member Beckerly.
Just that I agree 150%.
Anyone else? Dr. Pierce.
So as someone who studies critical race theory from its very early days with Dr. Crenshaw, when she started to pen those writings and complete empirical research, I couldn't agree with you more, as I did also listen to his comments during the board meeting and was very struck by the inaccuracies and the misinterpretations of critical race theory. I would encourage us as a board, as we decide what action we will take, that in that action, we communicate very clearly, very correctly what critical race theory is in our statement that supports the action that we take. In that respect, even though I do serve on the Ohio School Board Association as the central trustee, I support either action that we take, even if that includes pulling our membership from the organization.
Thank you. And Vice President Reyes or Board Member Ragland, any thoughts? I can't tell. The Board Member is trying to unmute himself. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, I was yielding to the Vice President, but I couldn't agree more with Board Member Brown. My only assertion is that we deal with our own issues of race here in Columbus City Schools as well. But I agree with what Board Member Brown said, and I would support his leadership however he wanted to move forward with this.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I sit as a member of the Black Caucus on behalf of our district, and the OSBA Black Caucus did have a meeting about this particular issue. In that meeting, I did say I was very strong about it, just as Board Member Brown, and it's because we have been doing the work. We've been talking about the work. We have been, Dr. Pierce last summer. We did the resolution. We've been talking about this, and we are a member of that organization. And if they continue to allow him to be the president, it does not reflect the values that we have set as this organization. And so I did say that to the Black Caucus, and I did say things along the lines of Board Member Brown that I would go back to my board and ask them to consider withdrawal of membership if, in fact, he did not resign. The Black Caucus has not made any official recommendations. They're still considering it. So are the OSBA trustees, which Dr. Pierce may be involved in a little bit later. But I do think that as a member organization who has spoken on this publicly, it would be good of us to do something and call for his resignation. So since Board Member Brown brought it to our attention, I will leave it to him with our path forward
and how we would go about that. But we can publicly call for his resignation, perhaps send a letter, and if that isn't done, make a formal resolution at the next board meeting.
I agree entirely with those steps, Madam President. I think that just talking about this tonight, I think that especially since we're the largest member of OSBA, we're the largest school district in the state, that word will get back. And I will help that, and I know others will. Dr. Pierce and others will help make sure that they that Scott Huddle and OSBA hears us, that we demand his immediate resignation. We cannot tolerate somebody with his views serving our statewide association of school board members. And by the way, just on a personal note, one of the items that truly bothered me was his reference to education by Nazis. I'm very familiar with that. And I'm horrified to see somebody make a comparison of that nature to Nazi education. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Board Member Brown. And just one final note on this kind of general topic. You know, I guess unfortunately we would say, because we believe a certain way, but there are a lot of people in this state that do believe like Mr. Huddle, including some members of our State Board of Education who are setting our statewide policy. And so if this is something important to us, we may also want to consider on the advocacy committee thinking about ways that we can advocate for our views, because in the end, they can really harm us if policy is against what we believe. So just putting that out there as well. Okay, other announcements. Okay, well, we're quite, oh, one more from Board Brown. Go ahead, it's okay. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did mention that I had two, and they're unrelated, I think. But I spent a good part of yesterday thinking about this. And May 4th, every year for the last 51 years has been a very sad day for me. Did a lot of reflection about the Kent State University tragedy, May 4th of 1970. But the part that I want to talk to, and I actually did some of this writing on Facebook yesterday because it bothered me a lot. As the 51st anniversary of the tragedy, Neil Young, who wrote the song Ohio, which talks about this event, called the tragedy probably the most important lesson ever learned at an American place of learning. He says, it's still hard to believe that I had to write the song. It's ironic that I capitalized on the death of these American students. Probably the most important lesson ever learned at an American place of learning. On May 4th, a student demonstration at Kent State left 4 students dead, 1 paralyzed, and 8 others wounded. The demonstration was meant to be one of many peaceful demonstrations against the Vietnam War. And the demonstration was ended abruptly and violently when the Ohio National Guard came onto campus and fired into the crowd for 13 seconds. Those brief shootings ended the lives of Chef Miller, Allison Krause, William Schroeder, and Sandra Schuer. These students, two of whom were simply walking between classes and not involved in the demonstration, were all at least a football field away. And whether justified or not by self-defense, the massacre sparked a nationwide student strike that closed many colleges and universities. At least for me, every year on May 4th, as I recall this tragic incident, it remains vivid, fresh, and clear in my memory, and the sadness has never dissipated. At the time, I happened to be a high school junior living about 45 minutes away from Kent State. I did have a fair number of friends attending school there. Some of us, and I realize this is 51 years ago, so some of us remember, and we must teach the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brown, who is always bringing up history. I think, and maybe what Dr. Pierce will also say, give it to her. It's a very good reminder of how history seems to repeat itself. And those similar kind of things happened this summer, happened just recently to our students. And you know, it is good to reflect on history as we move forward, but always keeping it in the context of the present so that we can use those tools, right? To actually take those steps forward.
Yes. And you know, the truth is, in 51 years, we haven't learned this. When we have engagement between protesters exercising their First Amendment rights and law enforcement, whether it's the National Guard or local police, things go bad. Things are not handled well, not from anybody's perspective, and we have to do better.
Thank you. Dr. Pierce.
You know, so Board Member Brown and President Adair, just your comments definitely have made me think about the importance of taking moments and opportunities just to show another person that you see them, that you care for them, just showing a sense of humanity to other individuals. And so my announcement is basically that, you know, we've been doing a lot of work as a district, and I know this is Appreciation Week for our teachers, our secretaries, our physical education people. We have these weeks of appreciation, and we put these posts and pictures up and do these videos. But I would challenge each one of us that as we leave this meeting and go throughout the rest of the week, that we make a genuine attempt to just have a conversation with somebody new, somebody different, to let them know that they're seen, that they're loved, and that we care for them. Whether that's a student in our district, whether that's one of our community partners or stakeholders, whether that's a staff member, whether that's a parent that is coming into our building to see how their child is doing. You know, let's just make a genuine attempt to see somebody and really appreciate them.
Thank you for that, Dr. Pierce. And again, bringing it back to our portrait principles, right? Empathy. Yeah.
One thing I have to add, and thanks to John Stanford for reminding me, because I know better, and I am familiar with the incident 11 days later at Jackson State. And, you know, again, I think that because Kent State overshadowed it to some degree, and all the focus and attention was there, it makes it's no less important that we haven't learned from Jackson State either.
Thank you. Other announcements? Okay, seeing none. Since Vice President Reyes is not here today with me in person, my friend Carol gets to read the script to go to executive session.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G3 Ohio Revised Code to confer with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland,
Yes.
Vice President Reyes,
Yes.
President Adair,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you so much, board members. We'll head to executive session with our invited guests, and we will come back to adjourn the meeting publicly as we always do. Thank you to all the staff who will not be joining us, who can go ahead and log off. And thank you all for your presentations this evening. And so we will see everyone. And yes, we will have a tiny break. Okay.